Chapter 2353 Realization. In the gigantic empty region of the Lost Clan, many powerful Renhuangs of the Lost Clan gathered. Sikong Nan and a few elders of the Lost Clan were also there. They were standing to one side and looking straight ahead. There were 9 Renhuangs at the same cultivation plane standing there. They were all 8th-tier Renhuangs with frightening auras. Among them, there was another white-haired figure. It was Futian. After cultivating in the secret zone paradise for a few days, Futian wanted to attempt to improve the battle matrix of the rocks. This was their first experiment. The Lost Clan had a high opinion of Futian. This might cause the ability of their clan to reach a new level. The cultivators were naturally exceptionally serious. Sikong Nan and the other senior members were all present. "Seniors, please set up the matrix," Futian said. The 9 great Renhuangs stepped forward. They stood in the sky in different locations. The aura of the Great Path burst forth from their bodies as divine light shone brightly. Powerful wills emanated from their bodies. Instantly, illusory figures of the ancient gods appeared and loomed over the sky. They formed some sort of resonance under the influence of the wills of the Renhuangs. Then, they weaved together, and an enclosed space was formed. A solemn sound, similar to the rhythm of the Great Path, echoed. The space suddenly became exceptionally grim. Very quickly, the battle matrix of the rocks took shape. A terrifying power erupted from the battle matrix, sealing off this part of the sky. Futian stood in the battle matrix, wielding a long spear. Divine light of the Great Path circled around him, and terrifying battle intent emanated from the long spear. The sound of the Great Path also roared from within his body. Futian's figure flashed, and he charged out like a bolt of lightning. He was like a god of war as he stabbed straight out with his long spear. Bang! With a loud explosion, the illusory figures exploded and shattered. The long spear struck a point on the battle matrix of the rocks. In an instant, the cultivators who had set up the battle matrix of the rocks all closed their eyes. Their wills resonated, followed by the divine light of the Great Path shining. All of the defensive power of the battle matrix seemed to gather at the point that Futian had struck, causing the long spear to be unable to pierce through. This was the strength of the battle matrix of the rocks. The defensive power of the battle matrix could be focused on one region, causing it to be as indestructible as a rock. "Try attacking," said Futian. A cultivator immediately lifted his hand and struck out. A gigantic palm strike charged towards Futian. However, at the same time, a flaw surfaced on the battle matrix of the rocks. In the direction of the cultivator who was attacking, a huge hole appeared. A cultivator attacking directly disrupted the balance of the matrix. Bang! Futian's long spear struck out and shattered the palm strike. He looked towards the battle matrix and then stepped out. He also merged with the battle matrix and became a part of it. Futian waved his arm, and the guqin strings of the Great Path before him materialized into a guqin. He played some notes. As the music flowed, everyone's hearts seemed to skip and beat according to the rhythm. Each and every musical note had the power to influence their hearts. When Futian inherited the teachings of Shinin the Great, he also received many songs that the great emperor had created. Even though the songs were not as good as the divine melody song of the lost divine that he created, they still had their merits. After all, Shinin the Great was the top rhythmic sorcerer of his time. The songs that he created were undoubtedly great. A song was played as the musical notes danced around in the air. The sound of the guqin was crisp and melodious. It contained a magical power, which allowed the cultivators to resonate with it through their spiritual energy. They seemed to have become one with the music. Gradually, the music enveloped every inch of the space. In the battle matrix, the spiritual energy of all the cultivators merged with the music. Their wills resonated with the beat of the music. In the distance, Sikong Nan and the rest of the cultivators were observing the happenings in the battle matrix. Their gazes changed as they sensed the transformation which occurred in the matrix. They could sense a rhythmic storm of the guqin. This rhythmic storm was a formless storm of rhythmic sorcery. It surrounded the entire battle matrix of the rocks and became one with it. It was as though the music had completely merged into the battle matrix of the rocks. The cultivators were astonished by this occurrence. "I heard that he has received the teachings of the ancient Shinin the Great?" asked an elder of the Lost Clan. Rumor has it that Shinin the Great was the top rhythmic sorcerer of his time," Sikong Nan explained. "There are relatively few cultivators in the world who are proficient in the way of rhythm. There are even fewer of them who can cultivate the way up to a high level. It's rare for someone to have such attainment in music. Futian must have been very good in rhythmic sorcery even before he obtained the inheritance of Shinin the Great." The other cultivators nodded in agreement. They continued to listen to the music quietly. The battle matrix of the rocks seemed to have become even more complete with the support of the music. Everything cohered into a unified whole. As the music grew more and more intense, the spiritual energy unleashed by the 9 cultivators also intensified. The divine light shone brilliantly. The aura circulating in the battle matrix of the rocks became even more frightening. The ancient gods were all shimmering with bright golden light. The cultivators in the battle matrix seemed to have lost their sense of self and joined together harmoniously. Rumble. Frightening aura spread outwards. The various cultivators moved at the same time. They looked ahead, and their movements were synchronized. The figures of the ancient gods raised their hands at the same time and sent palm strikes directly downwards. Intense rumbling of the great path could be heard. In the battle matrix of the rocks, various palm prints appeared and came crashing downwards. This scene caused Sikong Nan and the other cultivators to have sharp gazes. They seemed to have witnessed the prototype of the battle matrix of the rocks unleashing a powerful offensive technique. Powerful aura still emanated from within the battle matrix of the rocks. Then, a second wave of attacks burst forth. The ancient gods came to life. All of them sent out offensive techniques simultaneously. The might of their attacks was astonishing. Gradually, as they kept on attacking, their attacks seemed to not be as in sync as before. It appeared somewhat chaotic. "Did it fail?" mumbled the elders of the Lost Clan over where Sikong Nan was when they saw this scene. The surrounding cultivators stared at the battle matrix of the rocks. Sikong Nan narrowed his gaze slightly. He shook his head and said, "No. Although the attacks appear chaotic, they are, in fact, following the same rhythm. Wherever an attack from an ancient god in one place weakens, the attacks in other locations will grow stronger." The attacks landed time and time again. Suddenly, within the battle matrix of the rocks, a gigantic palm print appeared. Its might was astonishing. It seemed to burst forth from one of the figures of the ancient gods. The body of the ancient god was dazzling from head to toe and contained world-dominating might. The will of the cultivators had all merged into the figure of this ancient god, causing awe-inspiring attack power to burst forth. When the attack landed, the heavens and earth seemed to collapse. It was far superior to any of the previous attacks. "It is a success," mumbled Sikong Nan when he saw this scene. The battle matrix of the rocks had been fully integrated. It was not only complete in terms of defense but also attack. They could gather the power of the battle matrix in different locations whenever they wanted and unleash a unified attack. They looked at the battle matrix of the rocks. It was now complete. Compared to before, it had undergone a huge transformation. In the battle matrix, the 8th Renhuangs also sensed this. They were all somewhat excited. Right then, their wills dispersed, and the battle matrix immediately dissipated. The sound of the guqin stopped playing, and the battle matrix of the rocks disappeared along with it, leaving Futian and the 9 Renhuangs standing there. When the Renhuangs looked at Futian, their eyes sparkled with astonishment. They did not expect the experiment to be successful. Just now, they could clearly sense that they were more unified than any of their previous attempts. The resonance they felt made them feel as though the 9 of them were a single entity. "Renhuan Yi." Sikong Nan and the rest smiled as they walked up to Futian. Sikong Nan said, "I did not expect us to succeed on our first trial. Your music is indeed marvelous. We're still far from succeeding." Futian disagreed while shaking his head. This caused the rest of them to be stupefied. They were still far from success? Just now, hadn't they succeeded? Futian expounded. Just now, the 9 cultivators did it with my music as the medium. However, in order for it to be called a success, seniors from the Lost Clan need to be able to achieve the resonance on their own without the guidance of the music. Otherwise, you have to always rely on it. Since that's the case, then Renhuan Yi can be the crux of the battle matrix of the rocks, said Sikong Nan with a smile. However, he also understood from Yi Futian's words that they still had a long way to go. Yi Futian's idea was plausible. Yi Futian didn't leave after trying to change the battle matrix of the rocks. Instead, he stayed in the Lost Clan, trying to improve himself. In his normal state, he could only urge the battle matrix of the rocks at a level of Renhuang in the 8th realm. To get to an even more powerful state so that he could lead the battle matrix of the rocks in a higher realm, he would require some unique means. Although he hoped that one day the cultivators of the Lost Clan could break away from the sound of Guqin while still achieving full resonance, it would take time and practice, as well as absolute mutual trust between each other. All of which could not be done in just a day or two. At the same time, Yi Futian asked some cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate in both the battle matrix of the rocks and the rock battle form to purify their spiritual will. At this moment, in a cave inside the Lost Clan, the great path roared inside Yi Futian's body. Infinite characters flew out from that divine body, creating an extremely radiant sight. As those characters surrounded him, the divine light of the great path merged as well, and Yi Futian's body was suddenly expanding. At the same time, a phantom of the ancient god appeared behind him, like a Vajra battle form that contained powerful coercion. His entire body was filled with brilliant light as the divine light of the great path circulated above this battle form. This was the rock battle form. The ancestors of the Lost Clan combined the power of Gingjin and space to forge this powerful battle form, rendering it indestructible and invincible, which was also the foundation of the battle matrix of the rocks. Although he attempted to use the sound of Guqin to unify the rock battle matrix, he himself was separated from it. He had considered that if there were to be battles in the future, he had to be within the matrix, so it became necessary for him to cultivate this battle form. By then, he could be a part of the battle matrix and work in sync with it during the fighting. There were 9 levels of the rock battle form. The first 3 levels were easy enough to cultivate, and the middle 3 levels weren't considered difficult either. It was no problem for people in their realm to cultivate them. The challenges were mostly on the last 3 levels, which required powerful spiritual will to create a perfect battle form. The will and the battle form must be perfect as one. At the top limit of the cultivation, one transformed into an ancient deity and became part of it. Previously in the battle matrix of the rocks, those cultivators who were urging the battle matrix had attempted to urge the strongest state of their own battle form. However, it was very dangerous for them because they had not yet reached that point in their cultivation. There were many cave paradises in the secret zone of the Lost Clan, but Yi Futian did not have much interest in cultivating other methods inside those caves. He was an expert at many abilities, most of which were inherited from great emperors. Therefore, it was meaningless for him to cultivate other methods or abilities. What he wanted to achieve now was improving his overall strength. For him, this meant that it could only be achieved by altering the battle matrix of the rocks. The battle matrix formed by Top Renhuang was far different in combat effectiveness than the one that came just individuals. While he was cultivating, the other forces did not remain idle. How could the people from these top forces so easily let go of this continent that had descended? Yi Futian tried to avoid destroying the foundation of the continent, but these outsiders did not have those concerns. They simply didn't care enough. Myriad Realm and the Higher Heavens Realm had both experienced severe destructions. Cultivators from the empty Divine Realm and the Devil World were currently plundering the secrets of these 2 realms. It was the Central Emperor Realm that had been very quiet. Because the cultivators from Divine Prefecture were there, Princess Dongwon was there along with the great Imperial Army. None of the principalities from the Divine Prefecture dared to do anything foolish, and the cultivators from the human realm would not go about and cause damages at will. Today, out of all the 9 supreme imperial realms of the original realm, probably only the Central Emperor Realm, the Heavenly Mandate Realm, and the Mountain Realm were still intact. No cultivators dared to touch the mountain realm because the power of Buddhism was still something to be reckoned with in the upper worlds. On this day, in the secret zone of the Lost Clan, Old Ma came looking for Futian. "Uncle Ma, did anything happen at the academy?" Futian asked when he saw Old Ma coming over. "Nothing much. But not long ago, some people came to the academy asking to see you," Old Ma responded. Futian raised his eyebrows slightly. Someone wanted to see him. For Old Ma to come and inform him personally, the person's identity must not have been ordinary, or else Old Ma and the others would have refused this person outright instead of coming over to find him. As if he had read Futian's mind, Old Ma said, "Lord Taishian told them that you are cultivating in retreat and asked the visitor to come back in a few days. However, these people were extremely aggressive and had forced their way in. With supreme cultivators in tow, we couldn't stop them. They went straight into the cottage inside Heavenly Mandate Academy, saying that they will stay there until you get back. But they didn't seem to be malicious. Although they forced their way in, they didn't hurt anyone," Old Ma continued. Futian nodded. Had the other party injured any of the cultivators inside the academy, Old Ma would not have such an easygoing attitude. Even so, for these people to force their way into the Heavenly Mandate Academy was still a little out of line and way too arrogant. "Who were they?" Futian asked. He was already walking outside as he spoke. Clearly, he understood that since Old Ma came here, it meant that they couldn't handle the situation and that he needed to go back. "The ancient god clan of Divine Prefecture, the overlord of the West Sea Domain, the West Imperial Palace," Old Ma responded. "Previously, they had also participated in that battle with the Lost Clan." Futian nodded, recalling some things about this principality. At that time, the person in charge of West Imperial Palace was a Renhuang of the Eighth Realm, with overpowering strength. He was a man of few words and not fond of meaningless chit-chat. He wondered if it was him this time who led people to the Heavenly Mandate Academy. But what business would West Imperial Palace have with him now? It didn't take long before Futian was out of the secret zone, bade his goodbye to the Lost Clan, and departed with Old Ma to the Heavenly Mandate Academy without asking anyone else from the academy to accompany them. After all, the two continents were now right next to each other. He didn't need to bother anyone else from the academy cultivating in the Lost Clan. It was quite sufficient for him to handle this matter himself. Inside the Heavenly Mandate Academy, many cultivators from the academy were gathering around the cottage. In a courtyard outside of the cottage, a group of people stood there quietly. The person in the lead seemed particularly interested in the cottage. The person was moving around freely as if this place was part of the West Imperial Palace. They did not show the slightest sense of peculiarity. At this moment, one of them looked up in the distance and said, "He is here." With that, the cultivators from West Imperial Palace looked in one direction and heard a voice from a distance. "The West Imperial Palace came to visit us, and I was not able to welcome you in person. I ask for your forgiveness." After those words fell, Futian's figure appeared in the sky above the academy, then descended into the cottage inside, looking at the group of cultivators facing him. The makeup of the delegation from West Imperial Palace was a strong one. At the time when they were at the Lost Clan, he did not observe them too closely. However, now that he was reassessing the power of the ancient god clan, it was indeed terrifying. His eye directed at the cultivator heading the delegation again, and saw that it was a woman. However, she appeared quite handsome, dressed in attire that appeared rather gender-neutral. Nonetheless, it was difficult to conceal her alluring feature and demeanor. Futian remembered that in the last war with the Lost Clan, this woman was not part of it, so she might be someone who came into the picture later. But he saw that the woman, likewise, was assessing him in a similar way. Futian, who came from the lower worlds under the jurisdiction of Emperor Xia's realm, entered Emperor Xia's realm to cultivate. Then he moved from the Crimson Dragon realm to the Heavenly Mandate realm. Later, his name was known throughout the 9 realms, reputed as the uncrowned king of the original realm. Futian's eyes sharpened a bit. Had the other side been checking on him? Seeing Futian's expression, the person knew that he was a little displeased. She explained, "Emperor, you need not be surprised by this. In the battle at the Lost Clan, Emperor Ye's performance was amazing in defeating the people of Ancient God Clan, and it was said that you also defeated the Devil Emperor's direct disciple, Xiao Mu. How could we not be intrigued by such a legendary figure like yourself? And the West Imperial Palace is not alone. By now, the cultivation experience of Emperor Yi was probably quite a bit clearer to most top principalities in Divine Prefecture. After all, none of this is a secret. Everything leaves a trail to be followed. Chapter 2355, West Imperial Palace. Yi Futian's eyes were a little cold when he heard what the woman had to say. Were these forces in Divine Prefecture checking into his background? Indeed, as the other stated, his climb to fame could not be completely erased. In the Heavenly Mandate realm alone, more than a few people knew that he had first come from the Crimson Dragon realm. And anyone who went to the Crimson Dragon realm could surely trace his movements back to Emperor Xia's realm. Once they were at Emperor Xia's realm, it wouldn't be hard to continue tracking his history, layer by layer. As long as they were determined enough, there was enough information for them to dig up. When they set their minds on investigating something, those top powers in Divine Prefecture had a way to uncover anything they want, unless it was something extremely secretive. It seems that Emperor Yi cared a lot about that. But as eye-catching as Emperor Yi has been, I'm sure you understand this is quite unavoidable. Not to mention that Emperor Yi has already relocated families and associates from the lower worlds to the Heavenly Mandate Academy, then sent them on to Ziwei Segmentum. There is not much sense in disguising these details. The beautiful eyes of the peerless Empress from West Imperial Palace stared directly into Yi Futian's as if she was trying to fathom something from those eyes of his. Yi Futian raised his head and looked at her. When they locked eyes, Yi Futian seemed to have calmed down, not showing his emotions from before. It seemed that he no longer cared about what the other person had to say. West Imperial Palace didn't come here just to tell me this, surely? Yi Futian looked at the Empress and said. Furthermore, the way by which you all force your way into the Heavenly Mandate Academy doesn't seem very friendly. Emperor Yi was cultivating in the Lost Clan and avoided receiving visitors. Without using extraordinary measures, how could we meet Emperor Yi face to face? The Empress answered with tranquility. As for our visit this time, naturally, we are not here just to inform you that those principalities in the Divine Prefecture were checking you out. We just wanted to remind Emperor Yi that as someone who caused this many waves, you are attracting unwanted attention. What's more, Emperor Yi is in possession of inheritances from several great emperors. Principalities from whichever side have some designs of their own. Furthermore, don't forget that while you were at the Lost Clan, Emperor Yi had already offended most of the cultivators in Divine Prefecture, including West Imperial Palace. Therefore, although the original realm is part of Divine Prefecture, Emperor Yi must have some ideas as to the feelings of these forces from Divine Prefecture. Now, cultivators in other worlds are also watching closely, and surely, they are not friendlies as far as Yi Futian is concerned. If anything were to happen in the future, how many forces do you think would be willing to stand up for the Heavenly Mandate Academy? Do you think those forces in the Divine Prefecture would? The Empress continued. In fact, what she said was true enough. Although the original realm was part of the Divine Prefecture, if a war were really to break out, they would be lucky if these forces from Divine Prefecture didn't join in on the attack. In that case, I have to thank West Imperial Palace for reminding me. However, I still don't understand what any of this has to do with the West Imperial Palace. Yi Futian continued. The other was analyzing the situation with him, and warning him at the same time. But could the West Imperial Palace have gone through all this trouble just to remind him? Why bother going through so much trouble? Heavenly Mandate Academy is the heart of the 9 realms, and the original realm is part of the Divine Prefecture. Now Emperor Ye's achievements are one of a kind. As a Renhuang of the 7th realm to sit at the top of Heavenly Mandate Academy, no matter how you look at it, it is something truly remarkable. The Empress continued. In front of Yi Futian, there was always a faint aura of the Great Path permeating from her. Yi Futian looked at her with some vague understanding. After a moment of silence, he continued. So, what is the purpose of the West Imperial Palace coming to visit the Heavenly Mandate Academy? Previously, I have talked to Emperor Yi about the current situation facing the Heavenly Mandate Academy. I think Emperor Yi and Heavenly Mandate Academy are both in need of friends. You will need to integrate into the Divine Prefecture so you won't be isolated in the future. The woman continued. Although the Heavenly Mandate Academy and the Lost Clan have forged an alliance, the Lost Clan is also considered an external force that came to the original realm from the void, and the Divine Prefecture still does not identify with the Lost Clan. The Heavenly Mandate Academy and the Lost Clan together could be considered powerful, but it will be difficult to face everyone together. West Imperial Palace desires to ally with the Heavenly Mandate Academy? Yi Futian looked at her and asked. The West Imperial Palace is a supreme principality above all and has enough influence in the West Sea domain. If Emperor Yi wants to, we can be friends. The West Imperial Palace will help the Heavenly Mandate Academy recruit other forces in the West Sea domain to form an alliance. This way, the Heavenly Mandate Academy can become part of the entire Western Sea domain of Divine Prefecture. There will inevitably be some forces in other areas of Divine Prefecture who will not agree, but there won't be much they can do. Especially with Princess Dongwang in charge, it might restrain some of these forces in Divine Prefecture. The woman from West Imperial Palace continued. In that case, many thanks to the goddess, Yi Futian said with a smile. The Heavenly Mandate Academy wishes to make more friends, and what better friendship than being allied with the West Imperial Palace and the forces in the West Sea domain? Naturally, the Heavenly Mandate Academy is more than willing. I myself also want to be good friends with you, goddess. Would the West Imperial Palace ally so easily with the Heavenly Mandate Academy? If this were really the case, he wouldn't mind. After all, he understood that what the other had just laid out for him was the truth. The situation as it stood today was not the most favorable for the Heavenly Mandate Academy. The woman from the West Imperial Palace was caught by surprise when Yi Futian readily agreed with her. This was a man who knew how to take advantage of any situation. If the West Imperial Palace wanted to stand on the side of Heavenly Mandate Academy, they would also endure a great deal of pressure. They knew the current situation better than anyone. The alliance was true enough, but it was not as simple as all that. Is Emperor Yi willing to enter the West Imperial Palace to cultivate, then? The woman asked suddenly. Yi Futian was stunned. To cultivate at West Imperial Palace? What exactly does goddess mean by this? Yi Futian looked at the other and queried. The West Imperial Palace is inherited from the West Emperor, and it is the overlord of the West Sea domain. The inheritance of the West Emperor is contained in the Imperial Palace. I know that Emperor Yi shoulders the inheritance of several great emperors, but the inheritance of any great emperor is extraordinary. If Emperor Yi is willing to enter the West Imperial Palace to cultivate, you will have the opportunity to inherit from yet another great emperor. The woman continued. In addition, the West Imperial Palace will treat Emperor Yi fairly. Whatever status or conditions that Emperor Yi desires, we will consider them all. Behind Yi Futian, the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy were looking at this peerless empress from the West Imperial Palace. Secretly, they were all amazed at the ambition expressed by West Imperial Palace. They were bold enough to persuade Yi Futian to cultivate in the West Imperial Palace, thus becoming a part of the West Imperial Palace. Yi Futian's status was not as it was once. Today, he was the college chief of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, the palace lord of Ziwei Imperial Palace, and the leader of Four Corner Village, all at the same time. In addition, he shouldered the inheritance from Ziwei the Great, Xinjia the Great Emperor, and Shinin the Great, simultaneously. Not long ago, he was ruling the land of the original realm. What kind of principality dared to convince him to cultivate under them? From the perspective of those from the Heavenly Mandate Academy, such a request was only possible unless it was the likes of Dongwang the Great, the Devil Emperor, the Evil Emperor, and other such characters of this caliber who requested person. For a great emperor who was no more, it was just not enough to attract Yi Futian to cultivate under him with the inheritance alone. Chapter 2356, Shi Qiao. Yi Futian looked at the female Renhuang from the West Imperial Palace and said, May I ask who you are, goddess? I am Shi Qiao from the West Imperial Palace, said the woman. Shi Qiao, mumbled Yi Futian to himself. Behind Shi Qiao, an elder from West Imperial Palace said, Goddess Qiao is a descendant of the West Emperor and is the first heir of West Imperial Palace. When Yi Futian heard the elder say this, he had a strange expression. Back during the battle against the Lost Clan, he had not seen Shi Qiao. Another cultivator had participated in the battle. She most likely was not in the original realm back then. After Princess Dongwang gave the order, the various forces of the Divine Prefecture must have sent more of their members down to the lower worlds. Only then did Shi Qiao come here. Shi Qiao also claimed to be the descendant of the West Emperor, and the first heir of the West Imperial Palace. Her status was extremely noble. From the looks of it, the other party also placed great importance on this matter. In reality, Yi Futian did not know much about Shi Qiao's status in the West Sea domain. Shi Qiao had already been famous for many years there. She was born into an extraordinary background. She was the direct descendant of the West Emperor. When she received her family inheritance, she awakened the bloodline of the West Emperor, and had extremely high compatibility with its power. She displayed unparalleled talent, and was a perfect fit for the teachings that the West Emperor had left behind. Hence, she was declared to be the first heir of the West Imperial Palace. If it weren't for the fact that such a huge change was occurring in the original realm, it would have been impossible for a person of her standing to come to the lower worlds. There was a huge commotion in the various major worlds. A storm was surging in the original realm. The saying that the changes of the worlds would begin in the original realm had been passed down in the Divine Prefecture. Hence, various forces of the Divine Prefecture had arrived here. She, the goddess of the West Imperial Palace, and its first heir, had also arrived. As for why she had come to invite Yi Futian, it was actually because she wanted to test him. Based on the investigation carried out by the West Imperial Palace on Yi Futian, they discovered that there were suspicious elements regarding Yi Futian's background. He originated from the 9 states in the lower worlds. However, there were many parts of his journey up to the present day that were unclear. As the goddess of the West Imperial Palace, Shi Qiao had a thorough view of the talents of the cultivation world. Ordinary people might rely on extremely tenacious will, faith, and chance to advance forward, but it was impossible for them to have a smooth journey all the way. Yi Futian had developed too rapidly to the point that he could subdue the various proud sons of heaven. He did not appear to be an ordinary figure. If that was the case, it was likely that he was not from the lower worlds. According to their investigation, Yi Futian's birthplace seemed to have vanished completely. The records of his youth were erased just like that. There were many mysterious points regarding Yi Futian. He seemed to hide many secrets. He also controlled the Ziwei segmentum and the Four-Corner Village and bore the teachings of several great emperors. Hence, Shi Qiao had come over to the Heavenly Mandate Academy to win over Yi Futian. Yi Futian revealed a look of deep thought as he looked at Shi Qiao and said, "Goddess Qiao, you mean to say you will agree to any condition I put forward?" Yi Futian was smiling as he looked at Shi Qiao. Her temperament was extraordinary. There seemed to be a formless glow around her figure. It was as though divine light circled around her. Ordinary people would be ashamed of themselves and would not dare to approach someone with such temperament. When Shi Qiao saw Yi Futian's gaze scanning her, she revealed a strange look. The cultivators of the West Imperial Palace frowned slightly. Was Yi Futian after the goddess herself? "Rahuang Yi, what are your conditions?" Shi Qiao asked. Her expression was normal, and she appeared calm. Yi Futian slowly said, "Since we are forming an alliance, we naturally need to show our sincerity. Goddess Qiao has extraordinary talent. Would you be willing to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate with me as a member? If the West Imperial Palace is willing to allow me to inherit the teachings of the West Emperor, I will not let Goddess get the short end of the stick. I will guide you in your cultivation and give you the opportunity to inherit the teachings of the great emperors that I have obtained." As he said this, a formless aura emanated from the bodies of the cultivators of the West Imperial Palace. They frowned, and their auras instantly turned solemn. "So presumptuous!" chided an elder, as he coldly snorted. Goddess Qiao was the first heir of the West Imperial Palace. Yi Futian wanted Goddess to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy and cultivate? She had to follow him? He also claimed that he would not let Goddess get the short end of the stick and would guide her in her cultivation. Yi Futian spoke with such arrogance. However, the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy had indifferent expressions, as though it was a matter of course. These cultivators of the West Imperial Palace had trespassed in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. They wanted Yi Futian to join the West Imperial Palace to cultivate. They also wanted to form an alliance with the Heavenly Mandate Academy. If that was the case, there was nothing to be said about the condition Yi Futian suggested. If he joined the West Imperial Palace to cultivate, Goddess Qiao would likewise join the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Otherwise, wouldn't Yi Futian be inferior to the other party? How is this considered presumptuous? Futian is the heir of several great emperors. He defeated a disciple of the Devil Emperor and an heir of the ancient God clan. He is also the college chief of the Heavenly Mandate Academy and Palace Lord of Ziwei Imperial Palace. How is he inferior to Goddess Qi Yao? Ren Huangchen said. His tone sounded displeased. Since the other party had come here, how could they not show any sincerity? How was this forming an alliance? They clearly wanted to claim the powers that Yi Futian controlled as their own. How can Goddess be compared to Hua Julai? An elder of the West Imperial Palace coldly snorted. Yi Futian had defeated Hua Junlai, the heir of the Haotian clan in the region of the Lost Clan. However, it was apparent that in the eyes of the cultivators of the West Imperial Palace, Hua Junlai was unqualified to be compared to Shi Qiao. Shi Qiao was the first heir of the West Imperial Palace and the top genius recognized in the West Sea domain. She was destined to become the top figure and ruler of the West Sea domain. Although Hua Junlai was the heir of the Haotian clan, he was not the only heir in the clan. Shi Qiao's standing in the West Sea domain could not be compared to Hua Junlai's standing in the Nantian domain. Hua Junlai is but a nobody who lost to Futian. However, Yi Futian managed to suppress him even though his own cultivation was a plane lower than that of Hua Junlai. So what if Goddess Qiao is even more outstanding than Hua Junlai? Ren Huangchen replied indifferently. The other party's tone was arrogant, so he naturally did not mince his words either. Yi Futian was the heir chosen by great Emperor Ziwei. He would not be inferior to the heir of the West Emperor. In ancient times, great Emperor Ziwei was one of the strongest great emperors. He was an existence that stood at the peak. Several great emperors were under his command. Ren Huangchen was not holding back when he said this. The members of the West Imperial Palace believed that Goddess Qiao was peerless. However, the members of the Heavenly Mandate Academy did not think so. So what if she was Goddess Qiao? Before Yi Futian, she was unqualified to act arrogant. I wish to hear Ren Huangye's opinion, Shi Qiao said as she looked towards Yi Futian. Yi Futian looked at her and said, I have already stated my opinion. Could it be that Goddess is not willing to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy and cultivate together with me? When Shi Qiao heard Yi Futian's words, she actually smiled. She had a face that could launch 1,000 ships. Many cultivators of the West Imperial Palace were somewhat mesmerized. Shi Qiao rarely revealed such a smile. This Yi Futian was truly presumptuous. As expected of Ren Huangyi. You are exactly as I have heard, Shi Qiao said as she smiled. Ren Huangyi, it is fine if you want me to cultivate with you. However, my answer will depend on your skill. Chapter 2357, Raining Swords. When Yi Futian heard Shi Qiao's words, he smiled at her and said, Goddess Qiao, do you mean to say that you wish to test me? Shi Qiao's cultivation was at the same level as Hua Junlai from the Haotian clan. She was an eighth to Ren Huang. However, from the way the cultivators of the West Imperial Palace acted, Shi Qiao's cultivation should be far stronger than that of Hua Junlai. Unfortunately, Yi Futian knew little about these peerless figures of the Divine Prefecture. They were both cultivators of the ancient God clan, but there would certainly be a difference between them. After all, Shi Qiao was the descendant of the West Emperor, and was also the first heir of the West Imperial Palace. Yi Futian wondered how her abilities would compare to Xiao Mu's because he was a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. Yi Futian wanted to test her abilities. He was also curious what level of combat ability a top monstrous figure of the Divine Prefecture had. The cultivators of the West Imperial Palace had displeased expressions. As expected, this top genius of the original realm was extremely arrogant. They had investigated everything about him before this. It was indeed the case that in Yi Futian's long development, almost no one of his generation managed to suppress him. No wonder he behaved so presumptuously. If that is the case, I also wish to test out Renhuang Ye's abilities myself, said Qiqiao. Divine light circled around her body as she looked at Yi Futian with her beautiful gaze. Yi Futian's figure flashed. He traversed the space in an instant and appeared high in the sky. Qiqiao raised her head slightly as she took light steps forward. Divine light flashed, and she also floated upwards. In an instant, the two of them appeared in a region extremely high above the ground. In the Heavenly Mandate Academy, cultivators similarly rose into the sky. There were cultivators from the Academy as well as the West Imperial Palace. They stood at different locations as they looked up at the two silhouettes in the sky. Yi Futian and Qiqiao stood across from each other. Their figures were extremely dazzling to behold. Yi Futian's divine body of the Great Path shone brilliantly. Qiqiao was like a peerless goddess, noble and arrogant. Her temperament was without equal. Her body was bathed in divine imperial glory, causing people not to dare look at her directly. It was as though she was a true goddess. Qiqiao was the cultivator who had the highest compatibility with the teachings of the West Emperor. No one like her had appeared in the West Imperial Palace in the past millennia. She was the strongest person who awakened to its power. Hence, she had long been viewed as the first heir by the West Imperial Palace. In the current West Imperial Palace, no one could challenge her position. Wherever she went, she would always have multitudes of cultivators escorting her. The various cultivators of the West Imperial Palace would be there to protect her. This time, she had come to the lower worlds. That meant that the cultivators of the West Imperial Palace had also come along to the original realm. Goddess Qiqiao, shall we? Invited Yi Futian. He seemed polite. Renhuang Yi, your cultivation plane is lower than mine. You should start us off, replied Qiqiao. From their exchange, others could see how proud they were. They were reluctant to make the first move. From afar, the wills of cultivators descended upon them. Many cultivators below knew that they were not the only ones around. The West Imperial Palace coming over to the Heavenly Mandate Academy had drawn the attention of many of the top forces from the Central Emperor realm in the Divine Prefecture. Many of them had already arrived, but they had kept themselves out of sight and had not made themselves known. During the battle against the Lost Clan, Yi Futian suppressed Hua Junlai with his overwhelming might. Now, would he emerge victorious against Qiqiao, the top monstrous figure of the West Sea Domain, and the princess of the West Imperial Palace? If that is the case, then let's attack at the same time, said Yi Futian with a smile. As he said this, the pressure of the Great Path enveloped the vast space, covering this part of the sky. A formless storm encapsulated the vast land. The humming of swords sounded, and sword wheels circled all around the space. Qiqiao similarly released her own aura. This aura was unfamiliar to Yi Futian. It was a Yin aura that seemed to contain a sharpness to it and appeared indestructible. He had never encountered an opponent with such an aura before. Qiqiao was unique. The heavens and earth seemed to dampen. In the heavens above, raindrops appeared and drizzled down on the sword will that Yi Futian had gathered. The next moment, his sword will was actually drowned out by the raindrops. Yi Futian revealed a strange look. He extended his hand, and the raindrops landed in his palm. They actually pricked his skin, and a slit appeared on his palm. As the raindrops kept pouring down, his palm gradually turned red. Blood appeared, and he felt a bit of pain. Rain of swords! Yi Futian mumbled. The raindrops also landed on his body, piercing right through his clothes and directly landing on his skin. He felt an extremely uncomfortable prickling pain. Ever since he comprehended the sacred remains of Xinjia the Great Emperor and forged a body of Wei, Yi Futian's flesh was extremely powerful. Even top monstrous figures of the same cultivation plane as him could not break through the defense of his flesh. Their powerful attacks would not affect him when they landed on his body. Yet, these raindrops had actually pricked his skin and could make him feel pain. One could imagine how much power was within these raindrops. As expected, it was as he had sensed. The aura bore an indestructible feel to it. It felt impenetrable. These raindrops were like water that could penetrate through rock. It was a form of will and a type of way that became a part of Shichiao. When Futian looked at Shichiao again, he was clearly more serious. He was no longer as casual as before. Before they even exchanged blows, he already sensed how terrifying Shichiao was. She might pose a greater threat to him than Xiaomu. As expected, the most prominent figures of the Divine Prefecture could not be underestimated. No wonder the cultivators of the West Imperial Palace were so confident in Shichiao that they even came to invite Futian to join the West Imperial Palace. Buzz. Suddenly, an extremely powerful sword will gathered in the sky. Swordsmanship resonated, and a storm of the great path swept up from around Futian's figure. It caused the raindrops to be unable to come in contact with his body. They were destroyed by the sword will. When he unleashed the attack power of the great path, the raindrops couldn't touch him. Terrifying sword will swept across the space. In an instant, sword will filled the sky. A storm of frightening sword chi that contained billions of swords charged towards Shichiao. However, Shichiao quietly stood there, seemingly unperturbed. At the same time, a curtain of rain fell from the sky. It suddenly began to rain all around. Countless raindrops plummeted down from the sky, pouring down on the howling sword will. The raindrops pierced the swords. The countless raindrops directly drowned out the astonishing storm of sword chi. The countless humming swords were pierced through and could not approach Shichiao. The rain grew heavier. Of course, this was no ordinary rain. It was a domain of the Great Path, Shichiao's domain of the Great Path. Rumble. With Futian's figure as the center, a starry world appeared. Stars circled around him and enveloped the vast space. The rumbling of the great path could be heard. The stars all contained unparalleled power. The divine light of the various stars coalesced around Futian's figure. When Shichiao saw this scene, she did not plan to give Futian the chance to gather his power. Her figure shifted. This was the first time she had moved since the two of them began their exchange. Before this, she had always remained standing there quietly. This goddess stepped forward with peerless grace. She lifted her slender and delicate hands. Immediately, the surrounding curtain of rain moved with her arms. Countless raindrops coalesced and actually formed swords. It seemed as though the swords formed from the rain did not have any power behind them at all. Shichiao pointed forwards, and the multitude of rain swords pierced straight towards the various stars. The stars were gigantic and did not appear to be something that swords formed from rainwater could affect. However, when the rain swords landed on one star, they actually kept attacking one spot on the star. More astonishingly, as more rain gathered, the rain sword grew larger. Gradually, it formed a divine sword that resembled a waterfall from a heavenly river. It let out a violent sound. Rumble. The sword slowly pierced into the star. Then, like bamboos splitting apart, the divine waterfall sword stabbed into the star and frenziedly rampaged inside of it. In an instant, the star collapsed and was destroyed. This did not happen to just one star. All around Futian, the various stars that had gathered were all destroyed from the attacks of the rain swords. One by one, the stars exploded and shattered. Futian did not have the chance to prepare for an attack at all. Shichiao appeared fabulous. She lowered her head and looked down at Futian. After all the stars around him shattered, he seemed defenseless. However, Shichiao was still circled by the rain swords. She appeared imposing. "Renwan Yi, be careful," said Shichiao as she looked at Futian with her beautiful gaze. Divine light circled her body. During their battle, it appeared even brighter and more dazzling than before. As she said these words, she pointed a finger downward. Immediately, countless raindrops poured down from the sky directly towards Futian. The torrential rain coalesced into indestructible swords that flooded this part of the sky as they charged towards him. Although this attack was powerful, Shichiao knew Futian. This top monstrous figure of the original realm had defeated peerless proud sons of heaven such as Xiao Mu and Hua Junlai. He would not perish from being unable to defend himself against her attack. Yi Futian was not that weak. However, it definitely would not be easy for him to want to defeat her. Every drop of rain became a sword, and every drop of rain was a sword that lashed out. When the raindrops gathered together, the swords became even stronger and more domineering. This is one of the divine methods of the West Emperor, the raindrop divine sword. Cultivators of divine prefecture in the far distance were paying close attention to this battle. Shi Qiao enjoyed a great reputation far and wide. As the most powerful blood awakener of the West Emperor in thousands of years, her battle garnered lots of attention. According to legends, the West Emperor created the raindrop divine sword. One drop of rain could break open the sky. What was the definition of a great emperor? The great emperor was someone with the spirit of a pioneer, a world unto themselves. Take Xingjiao the great emperor, for instance. His body was a world in and of itself. Shi Qiao had inherited the ability of the West Emperor. In this realm of the Great Path, the raindrops that fell from heaven seemed to shine with sacred light. Naturally, these were no ordinary raindrops, and ordinary raindrops would not possess such terrifying power. As the rain fell and flooded the sky, there was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Yi Futian stood there watching those countless raindrop divine swords coming at him, and even he was stunned in this blinding curtain of rain. All the surrounding stars were annihilated under the barrage of raindrop sword will. At this moment, Yi Futian's body of the Great Path was dazzling with the divine light, as the Great Path howled frantically. In an instant, he suddenly turned into the color of pure fire, as hot as the sun. He appeared as a divine body forged by it. Yi Futian had once comprehended the body of Xinjiao the Great Emperor, and cast an extraordinary physical form himself. Since then, he had not stopped improving and cultivating this physical body to integrate all the power of the Great Path abilities into this physical form. At this time, his body turned into a bona fide divine body of the sun and transformed into a sun. His body was releasing endless divine sunlight, radiated in all directions. When the divine glory of the sun touched the raindrop divine swords, the swords hissed, then dissipated under the sun's divine glory. At the same time, Yi Futian's physical body became even more frightening. When the raindrop divine swords reached not far in front of him, they could not get any closer before being incinerated into nothing. As a result, a very curious scene was now forming in that space. In the midst of the pouring rain, there was a most brilliant sun, which then created a rainbow in that area of the Great Path. Shi Qiao did not waver in light of what had just happened but remained where she stood. While the rain came down even more urgently, it was accompanied by an extreme chill, as if on the verge of freezing this world. The divine glory of the sun wanted to break free of that curtain of rain, but was foiled by those raindrops that were falling madly. All it could do was staying inside the area around Yi Futian, unable to completely break free of the rain curtain. Shi Qiao stretched out her hand, and suddenly the raindrop divine sword gathered on top of her palm. Those endless raindrops circled and rolled as they converged into a river, then gradually resembled a waterfall. Boom! The waterfall came down with great force. The divine sword that was formed by the waterfall made of infinite raindrops fell with incomparable power and might. Even the space seemed to have opened up. Nothing could stop this ferocious momentum. There was infinite divine light shining upon Yi Futian, and the will of the great emperor, likewise, bloomed from him. Like a youthful great emperor, peerless in elegance, infinite characters now flying out of his divine body of the sun, converging into swords. Accompanied by the booming of the Great Path, Yi Futian raised his hand and pointed towards the sky. Suddenly, a huge solar divine sword penetrated the rain curtain in front of him. All the sword will of the raindrops was destroyed and split open as it collided with the waterfall divine sword. The waterfall divine sword collided with the solar divine sword, and the two actually merged into one another. The waterfall was torn apart, while the solar divine sword showed cracks. The two divine swords entangled then exploded and shattered in the void, leaving a rain of swords behind in the sky. "Emperor, you did not disappoint, after all," Shi Qiao said. With a turn of her mind, a pattern suddenly appeared in the sky, which sheltered the sun. I looked to be her divine wheel of the great path. A terrible vision appeared above the firmament. A sky river now appeared in this domain. In the middle of this pattern of sky river, ring-shaped vortices appeared as if formed by the terrible gathering of waves the size of a tsunami. In the middle of each vortex, there was a hole that looked just like an eye. An even greater downpour of rain was now raging between heaven and earth. This curtain of rain shrouded the boundless space, and the entire heavenly mandate city. Ren Huangqin and the others had already taken action to release the divine light of the great path on the ground below. They used their combined power to block the falling downpour. Otherwise, these raindrops were enough to slaughter every living soul, and it was not something that the people of Heavenly Mandate City could bear. A single raindrop was enough to kill them. The rain was getting heavier. The people in Heavenly Mandate City looked up high above the sky, and through the light screen, they could make out two figures that stood there. At this time, Shi Qiao, who was bathing in utter dazzling glory, was incredibly luminous, like a goddess befitting of her role as the descendant of the West Emperor. The terrible vision that hovered above her made her look like a goddess who was dominating this space. Further in the distance, many cultivators from Divine Prefecture felt an extreme chill. In the world of rain, they felt a bone-piercing iciness. It was as if the chill was coming deep within the soul. "That's Shi Qiao's divine will of the great path," someone whispered. According to legends, Shi Qiao had inherited most of the West Emperor's abilities and was the veritable #1 heir of West Imperial Palace. She was the premier enchanting genius in the West Sea domain, a goddess-level existence. Although Yi Futian had defeated Hua Junlai before, Shi Qiao and Hua Junlai were not opponents on the same level. Even Hua Junlai himself had to admit this. At this time, Yi Futian also noticed a strong sense of danger on the battlefield. The rumbling sounds came out as his body grew larger, as if turning into a gigantic battle form of an ancient god. What's more frightening was that inside his body, the divine light of the sun and the shadow burst out at the same time. In the next moment, a diagram flew out of him, which was the yin-yang diagram. The diagram was expanding madly. The sun, moon, and stars appeared between heaven and earth, resembling a complete world. Yi Futian's face was solemn as infinite stars surround this corner of the sky. Behind him, a divine shadow appeared, like the real manifestation of Ziwei the Great. Above the yin-yang diagram, the shadow and solar swords of catastrophe smashed out, interwoven with the heavy rain as the two collided, destroying it. But high above the sky, in the midst of the sky river, the eyes of the storm that was gathered by those horrific vortices became ever more terrifying. In the next moment, swords from those eyes of the storm lashed out, penetrating the void, and descended. None of the defenses could stop them, not even the light of the catastrophe released by the yin-yang diagram. Boom, boom, boom. A series of shocking collisions were heard. The sword light that fell from those divine eyes blasted above the stars. Yi Futian was like the young great emperor at this moment. All the stars in the heavens were at his beckon and call with the imperial shadow behind him. Horrific shattering sounds came out as the stars began to crack and shatter. The light from the eye of Tianhe seemed to be endless, not just a one-time attack. However, the stars surrounding Yi Futian were rotating into infinity. Above a sky full of stars, rays of divine light landed on Yi Futian. At this moment, it seemed that all the power of the stars in heaven were at his disposal. At the same time, under the sky river, the eye of the storm fell down like mad, which impacted all the stars. Soon, the stars collapsed and shattered immediately, like a world broken. The entire battlefield was shocking beyond words. A voice came from among the cultivators of Heavenly Mandate Academy. The speaker was Emperor Nan. Obviously, he felt the power of this proud daughter, the princess of West Imperial Palace, its premier heir. She was even more of a threat to Yi Futian than Xiao Mu ever was. Previously, even Xiao Mu, the direct disciple of the Devil Emperor, didn't make Yi Futian take him too seriously. However, this was not a surprise. Although Xiao Mu was a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor, he was one of many. Shi Qiao was a descendant of the West Emperor, and the strongest blood awakener in the past 1,000 years who realized the potential in her bloodline. She was the first person in the future of West Imperial Palace. This all made sense. Perhaps in all the lands of Divine Prefecture, not many could be found who were like Xiqiao. It was powerful indeed. This princess of the West Imperial Palace seemed to have awakened the power of the great emperor. No ordinary clans could compete with these people from the ancient god clan. They each have their own advantages, Lord Taixian said in a low voice. There had never been any cultivators from the outside worlds in the original realm before, so they were considered the cream of the crop. But at the moment, they felt they were a bunch of weaklings. Aside from those who had survived the divine tribulations of the Great Path, even characters like Xiqiao who was powerful enough to pose a threat to them. If Xiqiao took a step further, such as stepping into the realm of Rehuang, there would be no competition at all and would probably be annihilated in seconds. Buzz! At this moment, Yi Futian's figure disappeared, and there was a space divine light shining. In the collapsed starry space, he had disappeared, rushing out of that area. A divine light shined brilliantly as Xiqiao detected danger in the air. This was the great path of space ability. Xiqiao felt that sense of danger, and her eyes suddenly became extremely frightening. She stood high above the sky as a terrifying storm erupted from her. Suddenly, her eyes turned into real divine eyes, shooting out rays of light that flooded the space. Suddenly, a figure appeared, and it was Yi Futian. His entire body was radiant beyond belief. And invincible. But at this time, Yi Futian could feel a powerful pressure. The divine eyes of Xiqiao looked down, and turning the space into an area belonging to the Great Path. Destructive light came towards him, capable of immolating flesh and dismantling the soul. The Eye of the West Emperor! The cultivators from Divine Prefecture perceived this scene with a tremendous shock. According to rumors, Xiqiao, the princess of West Imperial Palace, may have inherited the Eye of the West Emperor. Many people did not believe it before or had their doubts, but they couldn't do anything but believe it now that they witnessed this scene. It seemed that Xiqiao had really inherited the Eye of the West Emperor. And Yi Futian, it seemed, was bound to lose. In this battle, he wouldn't have a chance of winning. Under the eyes of the West Emperor, all great paths were clearly perceivable with nowhere to hide, including the power of Space Great Path. A power of total destruction zoomed in on Yi Futian. There seemed nowhere for him to escape, not in the heavens and not in the earth. However, Yi Futian's body became even more brilliant as he continued to shuttle higher into the sky as if he feared nothing. His divine body roared nonstop, and an astonishing howling of the Great Path seemed to come from inside his body. In this shocking sight, he continued moving against the momentum, rushing towards Xiqiao. Chapter 2359, Extraordinary Heritage? Likewise, Xiqiao also became aware of the threat posed by Yi Futian. His body of the Great Path was extremely overpowering, almost like a divine entity. If Yi Futian were to get any closer, it would be very dangerous for her. The Eyes of the West Emperor was considered part of the Eye Sorcery Zone. At a glance, Yi Futian was completely submerged in the Eye Sorcery Zone. The rain was like silky threads, and these raindrop divine swords transformed into endless rays of light. They all fell upon Yi Futian, and every raindrop contained invincible power. In addition, the rain had now transformed into threads, threatening to destroy everything in their path. The sword lights formed by the convergence of raindrops seemed to contain a power that could immolate spiritual souls. In this space, Yi Futian felt as if he was mired in a swamp. It was an extremely uncomfortable feeling. Buzz! More brilliant divine light bloomed as a peacock divine shadow appeared behind Yi Futian. Then phantoms upon phantoms manifested out of the ether, and Yi Futian seemed to be omnipresent at this moment. Faintly, there was a rhythm of roaring sound, and it was the Vajra demon-slaying rhythm that shattered all things. At the same time, many phantoms of Yi Futian pointed toward the sky above simultaneously. Suddenly, many divine swords unleashed and carried with them an incredibly sharp aura of pure murder. The sword lights that were converged by the raindrops were pierced through and through. But at the same time, many elusive phantoms of Yi Futian had also disappeared. Only one figure broke through everything while continuing its upward momentum. Soon, it appeared to reach the end of this great path field. At this instant, in that space of the eye sorcery, a figure surrounded by divine light appeared. It was as if the spirit soul of Xiqiao herself had separated from her body and entered directly into the realm of West Emperor's eyes. Furthermore, behind her beautiful figure, an extremely sacred imperial shadow appeared. It was as if the West Emperor had reincarnated, descending into this field of eye sorcery. At this moment, Yi Futian felt that the rain had invaded his mind, and every raindrop pricked his will painfully. More than that, the strength of this conception seemed to have exceeded Yi Futian's experience. In his mind, body, and even the world of his life palace, it was full of raindrops. This was the world of the all-encompassing rain for as long as he was in this field and under this conception. Yi Futian saw Xiqiao, who was above him, pointing at him. Yi Futian felt as if he was standing in the rain with nowhere to hide. At this moment, Xiqiao was no longer just a descendant of the great emperor. She was surrounded by divine light. It was as if she was an empress in her own right. And the one who unleashed these attacks was no longer her either, but the great emperor himself. This was clearly an illusion, but it felt so incredibly real. The cultivators in the West Imperial Palace considered Xiqiao as the premier heir, and as expected, she was stronger than imagined. It was possible that she may have already integrated the inheritance power from the West Emperor. After all, she was a descendant of the West Emperor himself and the most powerful blood awakener, so it was not surprising that she could perfectly combine her ancestors' inheritance. Under such conception, the body and the spiritual soul, and even the life palace of Yi Futian were under simultaneous attacks. He felt that could really be destroyed at any moment. He, who had created this divine body of the Great Path, thought that it was an indestructible body. But the sense of danger was so real that he might have been killed just by this illusion alone. Boom! Yi Futian's life palace was also howling as a peculiar aura was released from his body. From the world of the life palace, divine light suddenly gushed out, drowning the will of the raindrops completely. When the life spirit of the life palace released all its divine might, the divine light on Yi Futian's body became even more dazzling. In a single turning of the mind, an area of the great path now centered around him, shrouding the vast surrounding area as if swallowing up that world full of raindrops. Therefore, within the great path realm that belonged to the eyes of the West Emperor, another great path realm was now competing for sovereignty. When she perceived this power, Xiqiao's eyes released an incomparable radiance. She stared at Yi Futian and thought that, just as she had guessed, Yi Futian must have had an amazing heritage. Who exactly was he? But there was no time to think at this time. Her delicate hands pointed down, resembling a gesture from the West Emperor. At the same time, Yi Futian also pointed to the heavens. Two lights appeared in the area of the Great Path, and when the two lights intertwined, a most mighty force erupted. Shocking light lit up the space. In the next moment, they both retreated simultaneously as everything seemed to evaporate in an instant. The rain was still falling softly upon Yi Futian. That white-haired figure just stood there, so quietly, as he looked up at Xiqiao, who was standing above the rain. This princess of the West Imperial Palace was indeed stronger than Xiao Mu, the direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. Little did he know that Xiqiao, the princess of West Imperial Palace, was equally shocked and disturbed. Although she had no time to carefully discerning the ability that Yi Futian released just now, she knew that was the true testament of Yi Futian's ability. His true divine will of the Great Path. It was a pity that it was just for a moment. But in that brief moment's time, Xiqiao seemed to have perceived something. Suddenly, the rain stopped, and there was no more rainfall in this entire world. Everything seemed to exist only in Xiqiao's thoughts. The cultivators below looked up into the sky, wondering who had won this battle. It seemed that they had not seen any definitive results yet. The cultivators from West Imperial Palace were a bit confused. Like the others, they did not see everything clearly before Xiqiao had already withdrawn her strength. It was clear that she did not intend to continue the fight. What had just happened beneath the eyes of the West Emperor? Did the eyes of the West Emperor unable to inflict serious damage on Yi Futian? At this time, the white-haired figure standing in the void did not appear to be injured. His breath was calm, and he was unharmed. In the West Sea domain, no one could battle Shi Qiao, and there was no need for Shi Qiao to use all of her strength. The eyes of the West Emperor was enough to crush some of the topmost enchanting geniuses in the West Imperial Palace. However, did that number one genius talent in the original realm actually hold off the attack of the eyes of the West Emperor? And remember, his realm was lower than that of Shi Qiao. From this perspective, perhaps Yi Futian's performance was even more impressive in this battle. What kind of existence was this that even Shi Qiao was not able to defeat him? Those top forces from Divine Prefecture were equally shaken to their core. Hua Junlai of the Haotian clan was defeated once at the hands of Yi Futian, but now even Shi Qiao was unable to gain victory. Who was this Yi Futian? What kind of secrets was he harboring? In their investigations on Yi Futian, the most important detail was always missing: his birthplace. This one missing link seemed to suggest that something had been deliberately hidden. At this moment, above the firmament, Shi Qiao actually gave the most alluring smile as she looked down at Yi Futian below. She said, "Emperor Ye's reputation is well deserved. In the battle today, Qiao was not up to the challenge. In this case, I would like to cultivate with Emperor Yi in the Heavenly Mandate Academy." Shi Qiao's words stunned the cultivators of West Imperial Palace. What had just happened in this battle? Shi Qiao had agreed to cultivate with Yi Futian in the Heavenly Mandate Academy? The princess of West Imperial Palace, the reigning heir and the descendant of West Emperor, was to cultivate in Heavenly Mandate Academy? What was this all about? "Qiao, don't be hasty," an elder from the West Imperial Palace cautioned Shi Qiao via voice transmission. He seemed to worry that Shi Qiao made this decision in the heat of the moment. "I have my reasons," Shi Qiao responded with voice transmission as well, which silenced the cultivators from the West Imperial Palace. There was no doubt about Shi Qiao's status within West Imperial Palace. Since she had made the decision, she must be quite serious, and no one could dissuade her. Yi Futian's surprise was no lesser than the others, and he didn't really understand it. He looked up at the figure in the sky. Was Shi Qiao serious about following him in cultivation at the Heavenly Mandate Academy? "Is Goddess Qiao serious?" asked Yi Futian. But Shi Qiao walked towards the area below and came to Yi Futian's side. She then continued moving downward, preparing to return to the dry land below. As Yi Futian accompanied her, Shi Qiao glanced back and smiled. "I said before that I wanted to see Emperor Ye's methods. Now that I have seen them in this battle, I am quite impressed. From now on, I wish to cultivate in Heavenly Mandate Academy, and I hope Emperor Yi will not deny me this opportunity." They had already returned to the grounds of the Heavenly Mandate Academy below. Everyone in the Heavenly Mandate Academy was most surprised by this. Was Shi Qiao serious about staying and cultivating? Did this mean that Yi Futian would also be cultivating at the West Imperial Palace? The goddess of West Imperial Palace was a little too enigmatic. However, her strength was truly tyrannical. Before this, the cultivators from Heavenly Mandate Academy had never seen anyone who could battle Yi Futian to such a degree, not even the direct disciple of the Devil Emperor himself. Shi Qiao's combat effectiveness had indeed surpassed any challengers so far. But from this perspective, the cultivators from Heavenly Mandate Academy admired her quite a bit. Such a woman, no doubt, would achieve extraordinary feats in the future. At this moment, there were several tyrannical auras that came from a distance. Suddenly, just as the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy raised their heads to look afar, groups of cultivators had traversed through the void and entered the bounds of the Heavenly Mandate Academy. These powerful cultivators were all from top principalities in the Divine Prefecture, and several of them belonged to ancient god clan. With such a powerful background, the Heavenly Mandate Academy cultivators were unable to intercept them and could only allow them entry into the academy. "Goddess Qiao of the West Imperial Palace wanted to cultivate in the Heavenly Mandate Academy?" someone asked. Obviously, these cultivators had heard the conversation between Shi Qiao and Yi Futian, and they had all observed the battle that had just taken place. Why would Shi Qiao choose to cultivate inside the Heavenly Mandate Academy? Unless Shi Qiao had detected something during their battle like the West Imperial Palace, they had checked into Yi Futian's past and thought that anything unusual about Yi Futian must be because of some unearthed secrets. They were thinking that perhaps Shi Qiao wanted to go to the Heavenly Mandate Academy as a way of winning Yi Futian over. Why, do you have something you want to say? Shi Qiao responded nonchalantly, looking at the man who spoke. Goddess Qiao wanting to cultivate at the Heavenly Mandate Academy has nothing to do with us. So how could we dare to have an opinion? The man asked with a smile. We are just curious, that's all. Emperor Yi is talented, but even Goddess Qiao, the descendant of the West Emperor, was much impressed by him. We thought that it must be because he has some extraordinary heritage. They were doubtful about Yi Futian's background. Yi Futian naturally realized this. He glanced around at the various cultivators. When he heard Shi Qiao's statements before, he knew that the various forces of the Divine Prefecture had a deep understanding of him. It was normal for them to speculate. What sort of background could I have come from? Ever since I started cultivating in the 9 states in the lower worlds, I have passed through trials and tribulations to reach where I am today. I was born in a small place that most likely all of you have never heard of. If I came from an extraordinary background, wouldn't I be the same as everyone here and be cultivating in the upper worlds of the Divine Prefecture? Said Yi Futian with a smile. He appeared casual as he said this. Let alone other people who were speculating, even he himself was not clear about his own background. He naturally knew that his parents in Qinzhou were not his birth parents. They must be somebody else. It was very strange that his parents and family had disappeared. They might have intentionally wanted to hide something. Moreover, the existence of his godfather had proven this point. A super cultivator of the devil world had been watching over him in Qinzhou, and claimed that he was born an emperor. How could Yi Futian's background be simple? Of course, he wouldn't reveal these facts. Who knew what would happen if he did? Since his godfather had intentionally kept it a secret, he would need to do so too. If a day came that he did not need to do so anymore, he might know the whole truth then. A cultivator of the Divine Prefecture replied. For a cultivator from a small place, you have managed to suppress various monstrous figures and unify the original realm. You defeated the cultivators of the ancient god clan as well as the disciple of the devil emperor. You also inherited the teachings of several great emperors. With unparalleled talent, you have conquered most of the relics of the great emperors. You unlocked the teachings of the demon peacock emperor back in the secret zone of the Donghua domain. Renhuan Yi, I suspect no one will believe you when you claim that your background is ordinary. It is reasonable for you to think so. It might be that I had an extraordinary birth and that I am a descendant of a deity who placed me in the mortal realm to grow and hone my will and character. No wonder I have such extraordinary talents. Thank you for reminding me. I seem to have understood some things, replied Yi Futian with a smile. However, if that is truly the case, the deity who gave birth to me is truly harsh, letting me face such trials and tribulations. In the future, if it turns out to be true, I will not recognize them as my parents. When the crowd heard Yi Futian jokingly say this, they were speechless. This fellow was actually praising himself. However, what he said made sense. If the truth was as they speculated and Yi Futian's background was extraordinary, why did he need to experience so many hardships? When they were investigating Yi Futian's history of development, they discovered that it was no small feat that he had managed to survive to the present day. He had fought his way through to this day. Ignoring the talent that he was born with, all his experiences were real. Various people revealed contemplative looks. They seemed to be considering some possibility. Some senior cultivators understood that part of history better. It couldn't be like that, could it? However, if it was truly so, they still did not dare to mention it. They merely speculated inside their minds. How likely was that possible? It might be that they were overthinking things. Some people were destined to be extraordinary from birth. They were rare finds that appeared once every 1,000 or 10,000 years. Such people were not unheard of in the history of the cultivation world. Rumor has it that Renhuang has allied with the Lost Clan and allowed their cultivators to enter the starry cultivation court of the Ziwei segmentum and the Four-Corner Village, someone said, changing the subject. They no longer wanted to speak on the matter of Futian's background. Futian responded calmly. The Heavenly Mandate Academy has already allied with the Lost Clan. Currently, the Shinny continent is right next to the Heavenly Mandate realm. I believe that all of you have already long known of this. I hope that all of you may set aside your differences and stand against the cultivators of the other worlds together with us. This was no secret. Everyone already knew about this. A little grudge is no big deal. We are all reasonable people. For the greater good, we naturally know what to do. I believe it is the same for Renhuang Yi. Now, the Divine Prefecture is one. The various forces have united and are now allies. Since Renhuang Yi is willing to ally with the Lost Clan, you must certainly also be willing to ally with us. In the future, if the opportunity arises, Renhuang Yi can head to the Divine Prefecture to cultivate amongst our forces and learn the magnum opuses of our clans. Someone said freely and frankly. This caused the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy to all reveal strange expressions. Was this fellow who was speaking coveting the cultivation techniques of the Ziwei segmentum, the Four-Corner Village, as well as the Lost Clan? Futian could head over to cultivate with the clans and forces of the Divine Prefecture in the future? Now, the original realm was facing a huge change. Who could say for sure what would happen in the future? However, it was certain that the cultivators of the Divine Prefecture wanted to first cultivate the fateful encounters that Futian had obtained. Futian did not point it out. Now, most of the forces of the Divine Prefecture were dissatisfied with him and had objections with him. His stance during the battle against the Lost Clan back then had, in fact, aided the Lost Clan. Under such circumstances, he did not want to offend the forces of the Divine Prefecture further. Right then, this person made this proposal for him to concede and offer up the fateful encounters that he had obtained to the forces of the Divine Prefecture to cultivate. This would settle the score. In reality, they wanted Futian to make a sacrifice to obtain the forgiveness of the forces of the Divine Prefecture. Senior, what you say is true. I am also of the same mind. Hence, I made an alliance with the Lost Clan, and we exchanged cultivation resources with each other. I taught the members of the Lost Clan attack techniques and allowed their cultivators to head over to the Starry Cultivation Court in the Ziwei segmentum to cultivate. Similarly, the members of the Heavenly Mandate Academy also entered into the secret zone of the Lost Clan to cultivate. I myself have also mastered the battle matrix of the rocks, revealed Futian as he looked at the other party. If all of you are willing to form an alliance with us for the greater good of the Divine Prefecture, I will naturally have no objections. I am willing to offer up the cultivation resources that the Heavenly Mandate Academy controls in exchange for all your cultivation techniques. We shall improve together to face the changes in the original realm. He said this in a friendly tone as he did not mind forming alliances. However, if the members of the Divine Prefecture merely coveted his cultivation resources, it was meaningless for him to concede. He might even be making his future enemies stronger by allowing the members of the Divine Prefecture to improve their abilities. If a force was not willing to forge an alliance and exchange cultivation resources, Futian did not believe that the other party would be grateful for his aid. If he gave them an inch, the other party would ask for a foot. For instance, they might seek the teachings of the great emperors. If that was the case, he might as well draw a line in the sand clearly. When the elder heard Futian say this, he narrowed his eyes slightly. It seemed that it was impossible for them to make this top genius in the original realm concede. During the battle against the Lost Clan, Futian had offended many forces of the Divine Prefecture. Was he actually not afraid of the consequences? Then, what about Goddess Qiyao? If she joins the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate, is that considered having forged an alliance with you? Someone asked. Divine light shot out from Qiyao's beautiful gaze as she looked at the other party. Her eyes actually contained formless pressure that enveloped the other party from afar. The cultivator who had spoken was a ninth to Renhuang. Qiao was actually not afraid of him, glaring at him all the same. He frowned and swept a glance at the other party. Shi Qiao said. Since I have joined the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate, I will naturally follow the arrangements of the college chief. I will cultivate in whatever Ren Huangyi allows me to. As she said this, Shi Qiao smiled and said to Yi Futian, Ren Huangyi, what do you think about this? Goddess Qiao, since you are willing to do so, I will not turn you away, replied Yi Futian. This caused the members of the Divine Prefecture to stare at the two of them. Why did the relationship between the two of them feel abnormal? The cultivators looked at Yi Futian and Shi Qiao. Now, the two of them were basically in sync. Was the West Imperial Palace planning to lay its hands on the cultivation resources that Yi Futian possessed? They actually did not hesitate to allow Shi Qiao to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate and seduce Yi Futian. With the peerless elegance of Goddess Qiao, even Yi Futian would have difficulty resisting her charms. They might even become a couple. Would the members of the West Imperial Palace be willing to marry off their future top figure? Was Yi Futian worthy of them doing so? If they set aside their statuses, the two of them were quite a match. Both of them were peerless figures. It was just that Yi Futian's origins were not very clear. Now, everyone was speculating over it. However, Shi Qiao was the true descendant of a great emperor. She was the descendant of the West Emperor, and the strongest person to awaken to the power of his bloodline. She was the first to do so in 1,000 years. With such status and exceptional talent, even as the college chief of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, Yi Futian was far from worthy of her hand. From the looks of it, Ren Huangyi is looking down on the other forces of the Divine Prefecture, someone said in a provocative tone. The person continued, You allied yourself with the Lost Clan and allowed Goddess Qiao of the West Imperial Palace to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate. However, you seem unwilling to do the same with the other forces of the Divine Prefecture. It appears that Ren Huangyi has not let go of the incident with the Lost Clan. Why do you say so? I have said that as long as you are willing, the Heavenly Mandate Academy will ally with the various forces of the Divine Prefecture and exchange cultivation resources, replied Yi Futian in a casual tone. He was not angered. He naturally understood that the members of the Divine Prefecture were intentionally provoking him and wanted to stir up conflict. All right. Our Infinite Mountains is willing to offer up cultivation resources for exchange and form an alliance with the Heavenly Mandate Academy, a cultivator said. He was from the strongest force of the boundless domain, Infinite Mountains. They had inherited the teachings of an ancient great emperor figure. Now, they had taken the initiative to ally with the Heavenly Mandate Academy. The cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy frowned. They were doubtful of the sincerity of the other party. Would the cultivators from the boundless domain really be willing to share their top cultivation resources with them? The cultivators from the boundless domain most likely intended to share some cultivation techniques perfunctorily in exchange for the cultivation resources in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Huangqin took a step forward and replied, Of course, there's no problem. However, I need to first examine what kind of resources you are willing to share. Based on that, the Heavenly Mandate Academy will decide what level of cultivation resources we will exchange. It would not be easy for the other party to ally with the Heavenly Mandate Academy. If the other party only coveted their cultivation resources, they would not agree to their request. From the looks of it, the Heavenly Mandate Academy still does not trust the forces from the Divine Prefecture. The so-called alliance is only lip service. In reality, you have no intention of joining forces with us, snorted the cultivator from Infinite Mountains. He added, Looks like the West Imperial Palace is more capable in persuasion. What do you mean by that? Questioned a cultivator from the West Imperial Palace coldly. He gave the cultivator from Infinite Mountains a displeased glance. The latter paid no heed to it and merely smiled. A youth then emerged from the group of cultivators from Infinite Mountains. The youth was surrounded by the divine halo of the Great Path. The brilliant glory which surrounded him seemed to be a natural glimmer, and not something he intentionally unleashed. It was as though he was born with a divine body and was destined to be exceptional. With a glance, the cultivators from the West Imperial Palace recognized the youth. He was the most talented figure among this generation of cultivators from Infinite Mountains. He was the divine child of infinite mountains, and similarly the heir of a great emperor. He was powerful and was crowned Boundless Divine Child. Boundless Divine Child stepped forward as he looked at Yi Futian and Shi Qiao. He said, "I have long heard of the fame of the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Since Goddess Qiao is willing to enter the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate, I also want to cultivate in the Academy for a period of time. Will Renhuan Yi allow my sudden request?" Boundless Divine Child continued, "Of course, I only ask Renhuan Yi to treat all of us equally. I am not interested in the cultivation resources of the Heavenly Mandate Academy." As soon as he said this, another person emerged from the crowd and said, "I also want to cultivate in the Heavenly Mandate Academy for a period of time. Will Renhuan Yi allow it?" This person was the divine child of the Vajra region. Golden light circled around his entire body. He appeared to have a golden divine body. It looked extremely powerful. Then, one by one, others expressed their intentions of joining the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate. This caused the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy to reveal strange looks. The Heavenly Mandate Academy was not some holy land. They might be considered the #1 cultivation ground in the original realm, but these people were from the ancient god clan. Did they need to do so? Clearly, they had no intention of joining the Heavenly Mandate Academy for real. For them, the only value that the Heavenly Mandate Academy offered was the starry cultivation court as well as the teachings inherited from the great emperors that Yi Futian mastered. Or perhaps, these forces from the Divine Prefecture only wanted to pressure the Heavenly Mandate Academy and force Yi Futian to yield. They wanted the Heavenly Mandate Academy to compromise and share all their cultivation resources with all. Otherwise, why would they lower their statuses to cultivate in the Heavenly Mandate Academy? Deep down, these cultivators from the ancient god clan most likely looked down upon the Heavenly Mandate Academy, which was a local force of the original realm. Moreover, during their battle with the Lost Clan, Yi Futian offended quite a few factions of the ancient god clan. After all, Yi Futian once collaborated with the ancient god clan to break through the battle matrix of the rocks. These factions assumed that Yi Futian did not give his best during the battle, leading to their failure to break through the matrix. Otherwise, they would have entered into the secret zone of the Lost Clan then. Yi Futian himself forged an alliance with the Lost Clan and had access to their cultivation resources. He then attracted Goddess Qiao from the West Imperial Palace to join him to cultivate in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. In the future, Yi Futian might draw the rest of the forces in the West Sea domain to form an alliance with him. His academy would further expand its influence. This caused the ancient god clan from the Divine Prefecture to be irritated. Moreover, they were also interested in unveiling the secrets behind Yi Futian's identity. Hence, they were intentionally suppressing Yi Futian now. Yi Futian saw various figures standing in different locations in the sky. Each and every one of them were outstanding cultivators. The cultivator from the Haotian clan was among them too. Yi Futian even spotted Hua Junlai in the crowd. Judging from their auras and the divine light of the great path which surrounded their bodies, they had no intention of forging an alliance with him. They were clearly here to force him and the Heavenly Mandate Academy to yield to their demands. The other forces of the Divine Prefecture stood further behind. They did not declare their stance. However, they most likely wanted a slice of the pie and were waiting for Yi Futian to compromise. Shi Qiao gazed up at the silhouettes in the sky. Each one of these figures were extraordinary. There were 8th tier and 9th tier Renhuangs. Many of them were renowned figures in their respective domain in the 18 domains of the Divine Prefecture. Now, they were all standing in the sky and pressuring Yi Futian. They claimed to want to form an alliance, but they were pressuring him to yield in reality. However, this was unrelated to her. Although she said she wanted to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate, that did not mean that she would join Yi Futian in going against the various forces of the Divine Prefecture. She wanted to see how Yi Futian would resolve his situation. That day, in the region of the Lost Clan, it was Princess Dongwang descending upon the region that had resolved the crisis faced by the Lost Clan and allowed Yi Futian to escape his predicament. However, the forces of the Divine Prefecture clearly were not willing to let him go. Now, they had descended upon the Heavenly Mandate Academy simultaneously. The alliance between Yi Futian and the Lost Clan had clearly made the various forces upset. Chapter 2362 The Siege. Currently, if Yi Futian were to agree to their demand, then all the forces from the Divine Prefecture would swarm in and enter Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate. At that time, how could he maintain control of the situation? The capability of Heavenly Mandate Academy was limited, and there was still something left to be desired when comparing to these top forces from Divine Prefecture. In the case of the Ancient God Clan, in particular, the chasm between the two was even greater. Today's occurrence was nothing more than these cultivators trying to bully their way into the Heavenly Mandate Academy in a bid to take over the cultivation resources controlled by Yi Futian. Yi Futian's eyes swept toward those cultivators as an invisible oppressive coercion crept in every direction. The entire Heavenly Mandate City was under that majestic and awesome pressure. The Heavenly Mandate Academy was just one of the many principalities in the original realm. You are all from the top clans in Divine Prefecture, so there was no need for you to cultivate in Heavenly Mandate Academy. I'm afraid you praised the Heavenly Mandate Academy too much, said Yi Futian as he looked at these people. As the head of many clans, Emperor Yi is in charge of the inheritances of several great emperors, as well as being in charge of the Starry Cultivation Court. These are all places worthy of our cultivation. Someone retorted and did not disguise the greed they had for the cultivation resources at Yi Futian's disposal. Their purpose was to intimidate Yi Futian. Today, it was not up to him to decide whether he would give in or not. The Heavenly Mandate Academy is a small place. I'm afraid we can't accommodate all of you, Yi Futian responded. Yi Futian's voice was indifferent. Immediately, the atmosphere froze and felt even more tense. This was Yi Futian directly refusing to receive them. So, Emperor Yi is ignoring our request, someone piped up. Emperor Yi claims that Original Realm is a part of Divine Prefecture, and that everything was working towards an alliance within Divine Prefecture. But it seemed to us that you don't really consider yourselves as a part of us. You think that the Heavenly Mandate Academy and the land of the Original Realm are an entity unto themselves. Voices continued to filter in, blaming Yi Futian for some imagined transgressions and other made-up charges. They made it sound as if Yi Futian was the one who broke up the unity of Divine Prefecture and was resistant to share cultivation resources. In their mind, he was too selfish, and it was an indication that he had no sense of belonging to the land of Divine Prefecture. Emperor Yi also possesses the inheritances of several great emperors. I would like to see what kind of cultivation level was able to impress Goddess Qiao so much, someone else said. It was none other than the descendant of Yuanshi the Great from Yuanshi Domain, the heir of Yuanshi Palace. His aura was astounding, and he stood out above everyone else. I would also like to see for myself the talents of Emperor Yi. The speaker was a top figure from the Boundless Domain. It was the boundless divine child himself. He was surrounded by the divine light of the Great Path and was radiant beyond words. Emperor Yi controlled the divine body of Xinjiao the Great Emperor and comprehended an extraordinary body of the Great Path. I cultivated the Vajra divine body, and I would like to experience the might of Emperor Ye's divine body firsthand. The divine child of Vajra region also joined in. The power of the Vajra divine body was superb and domineering. It had passed down through the great emperor, who was also of the ancient god clan. After that, other voices continued to speak. Even those who didn't speak had taken a step forward. Their bodies were radiant and bright, surrounded by divine light, and it was obvious that they all wanted to confront Yi Futian. For a time, the divine light of the Great Path was extremely brilliant as it sprinkled down upon Yi Futian. All those auras were truly terrifying, and the cultivators that were here to challenge Yi Futian were at least at the level of Hua Junlai. These heirs of the ancient god clan wanted to have their own exchanges with Yi Futian. But this could also be seen as Yi Futian being recognized by these top forces from the Divine Prefecture. He had defeated the Devil Emperor's disciple as well as Hua Junlai and the descendant of the Haotian clan. He had impressed Goddess Qiao so much that she was now willing to enter the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate. This kind of strength needed no further embellishment. Therefore it was no surprise that these genius talents wanted to test the power of this reputed king of the Heavenly Mandate. Moreover, they wanted to see what secrets Futian might be harboring, and if he was hiding anything. Everyone in the Heavenly Mandate Academy looked quite somber. They raised their heads to look at the figures. Every one of them was an extraordinary talent, and this assembly was even more awe-striking than the one previously presented at the battle with the Lost Clan. Among them, there was even Renhuang of the Ninth Realm. Never mind Futian himself, just in Heavenly Mandate Academy alone and amongst its allies, they were hard-pressed to find some top enchanting figures of this caliber who could contend with these outsiders. Clearly, this was a bit too much. These cultivators were ganging up on Futian at the same time. Futian raised his head and glanced at the cultivators who were in the void. He had a sharp look about him. His clothing now fluttered by itself, and his silver hair danced in the air. Then, they saw his body moved as he swayed upward, heading straight into the sky. Ha! Everyone was stunned. Futian made a move alone and headed towards the challengers by himself. Could it be that he wanted to take on these cultivators by himself? Shichiao also showed a look of concern. She had personally experienced Futian's strength, and knew he was incredibly strong. Although the two of them had stopped, Shichiao knew very well that it was difficult enough for her to defeat Futian even when she was one realm higher than him. In the scenario of a sustained battle, the outcome was unpredictable. But even so, did he know what kind of challengers was he facing? Shichiao also knew of these people. Even if she hadn't seen them before, she had heard of their names and knew who they were. These characters were the top figures who were well known in their respective domains. They enjoyed a reputation of their own. No matter how powerful Futian was, he couldn't face so many top enchanting existences all at once. These people deliberately pressed Futian, forcing him to fight so that they could examine his combat effectiveness. At the same time, they wanted to have the opportunity to uncover Futian's secrets. If Futian were to fight them, it was only a matter of time before he had to use all the tricks in his bag and expose all of his abilities in front of everyone. Those in the Heavenly Mandate Academy were a little puzzled when they saw this. Those cultivators were some top-notch geniuses. No matter how strong Futian was, it would not be easy to contend with all of them. At this moment, in the distance, a group of mighty and powerful cultivators came in a hurry. This group was made of people with extraordinary abilities and strengths. The man in the lead was Sikong Nan, indicating that reinforcements from the Lost Clan had arrived. The cultivators from various principalities of Divine Prefecture looked at them without too much concern, though. This here was not Shin'i Continent, and the Lost Clan, without the support of the supermatrix of Shin'i Continent, was unlikely to pose any serious threat against these various powers of the Divine Prefecture. They were curious to see what the use of Futian's alliance with the cultivator of the Lost Clan was. Futian, Sikong Nan called out. Futian looked at the cultivators from the Lost Clan in the distance, and nodded slightly at them, indicating that they need not take action. He floated high in the sky. As he surveyed the cultivators surrounding him, those people also returned his gaze. The divine light on their bodies was even more radiant and dazzling. It was as if they were the descendants of the gods. "Do you want to come up one by one, or do you want to attack all together?" Futian asked. All the cultivators who were present were famous figures in the domains of the Divine Prefecture. Naturally, they would not deign to rush in altogether against Futian. They came to pressure him, but they didn't want to really kill him. If Futian were killed today, it would not be easy to explain it away to Princess Dongwang. Not to mention, there was a mysterious cultivator behind Futian, the teacher from Four Corner Village. The divine light that shone upon these surrounding cultivators glistened with even more brilliance. They looked at one another as if to see who would make the first move. Above the sky, Futian was standing tall, surrounded by all these cultivators who were challenging him. Under the crowning of the divine light, it was obvious that anyone who was here was someone with a commanding presence in the Divine Prefecture. At this moment, a voice came out as a man took a step forward. The man was brilliant all over while releasing a golden divine glory. His upper body was draped in a golden half-shirt, the same color as his skin, which seemed to be golden as well. This was the divine child from the Vajra region, whose strength was tremendous. The Vajra region was one of the principalities within the ancient god clan, housed inside the Vajra domain of the 18 domains in Divine Prefecture. The method of cultivation in the Vajra region was wild and aggressive, impenetrable and invincible. The cultivators' physical bodies were tempered to the extreme to cast the Vajra divine body, also known as the Vajra indestructible form, impervious to any great path. Any existence of the same level, even if allowed to attack at will, could not manage to shatter this particular physical form. In the Vajra domain, the Vajra region was a world unto itself. It was a world carved by the gods in the days of yore. It was said that the great path rule that was inside of it was somewhat different from those on the outside world. Those born into the Vajra region were said to be extraordinary, baptized by the divine power of the Vajra region during their growth. Only those who could awaken the power of the Vajra region were qualified to become an official member. Those who could not would only exist in the margins of the Vajra region, not considered one of its cultivators in any real sense. The same went for the many principalities within the ancient god clan, most of which were not at its core. Since there were not many cultivators for this reason, even the domain chief's manner of the Vajra region had to be especially courteous to the cultivators in the region. The status of these cultivators was not necessarily lower than that of the domain chief's manner, and most of them were far above it. At this moment, the divine child of the Vajra region looked at Futian. He put his hands together and bowed slightly without speaking. However, the divine light of the great path bloomed, and an incredibly sharp aura expanded from him. The instant his arms moved, an extremely strong and sharp will suddenly manifested in the space, shrouded by golden divine light. Although he had not made his move yet, the sense of threat was clearly palpable. The divine light on the divine child was shining so magnificently and brilliantly, with indescribable radiance. He raised his hand and pointed towards Futian across the space. In an instant, the power of this gesture penetrated heaven and the earth, leaving an arc of light in the void that zoomed in on Futian, with intent to kill. Buzz! The divine light was exceptionally bright, cutting through the space with absolute dominance. It was as if the power of this one finger was even more terrifying than any divine swords, that it was capable of penetrating everything and get in front of Futian. Everyone was observing this attack closely. Vajra region's divine power was second to none, the likes of which were difficult to find even among the ancient god clan. They were all curious as to how Futian would counter it. Futian felt the threat from his opponent as soon as the man acted. Futian's entire body was full of brilliance, and a terrible light was released from the divine body. There was a roaring boom of the great path as his body turned into the way with incomparable dominance. Infinite sword-shaped characters appeared, surrounding his divine body. Likewise, Futian raised his hand and pointed. In an instant, there seemed to be infinite sword will that resonated between heaven and earth. Numerous sword-shaped characters gathered upon Futian's finger, and came down with the motion of his finger. As his hand dropped, the sword manifested between his fingers, and at this moment, his divine body of the great path was a body of sword. Two forces of the two fingers converged and collided in the void. That Vajra finger kept moving forward, destroying all sword will along the way. But upon Futian's body, endless divine swords gathered together, as if they had turned into a river of swords. The Vajra finger navigated through the river as a terrifying divine glory erupted from it. However, it could not get closer to Futian and pulverized under the infinite sword will. What an aggressive attack! Below, cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy shuddered. He was, indeed, the divine child of the Vajra region. As expected, none of these people were ordinary. They couldn't help but worry for Futian. After all, this was never meant to be a fair battle. With all these cultivators laying siege on him, how was Futian supposed to fight that? The Vajra region's divine child didn't stop there. His hands clasped together, and suddenly an infinite golden divine glory bloomed from his body, which turned into a godlike phantom. He looked straight at Futian, uttered a sound while his palms faced forward. Suddenly a gigantic and boundless giant palm blasted forward. At the same time, above the void, countless giant palms of Vajra manifested. They sheltered the heaven as well as this corner of the sky, intending on burying Yi Futian right here, right now. Yi Futian focused his attention there as his mind turned. Immediately he was surrounded by stars, which transformed this area into a starry sky world. Many of the stars seemed to merge into one as their brilliance became interwoven and revolved around Yi Futian. Accompanied by loud rumbling sounds, countless giant palms of Vajra blasted him with unspeakable belligerence. These giant palms madly expanded until they could crush these stars, causing them to explode. Nonetheless, they still could not break down the starry defense in this starry domain. The body of the divine child floated in the air as his Vajra battle form was becoming even more massive. In an instant, endless golden divine glory blanketed the world, as if the entire world was taken over by the Vajra region. Above the firmament, endless giant palms of Vajra slammed down, covering this corner of the sky, including the starry domain. Boom! At this moment, the many stars that surrounded Yi Futian began to explode frantically, as if the sky and earth were on the verge of being split wide open. The whole scene was beyond horrifying. Those frightening palms continued to strike down and swept toward Yi Futian, who was surrounded by the stars. The divine power of Vajra region is truly deserving of its reputation, verily one of the most domineering powers in the world. Some other cultivator from the ancient god clan whispered. As they were watching the battlefield, they were in no real hurry to join in the action. If Yi Futian were able to quell Shi Qiao, it would not be easy for the Vajra region's divine child to take him. An even more radiant starlight was released from Yi Futian's body, and the surrounding stars suddenly got brighter. The light seemed to have transformed into something tangible. With Yi Futian's body roughly as the center, an absolute field now formed. Inside this area, a starry shield appeared, protecting Yi Futian. Boom, boom, boom! The terrifying giant palms of Vajra blasted down, smashing on the light screen, but was unable to destroy it. The starry light screen was clear as crystal and completely transparent. The divine glory on Yi Futian seemed to melt into the light screen as if it was part of his great path divine body. This kind of large-scale offensive method, aggressive though it may be, was simply unable to break through. Those who were watching exclaimed inwardly. As expected, someone that even Shi Qiao could not take down would not be so easily defeated. Just the defensive power of this starry shield alone was astounding. Vajra region's divine child did not take any other actions before someone else stepped out. The man was the heir of Yuanshi Palace from the ancient god clan in Yuanshi domain. He glanced there before pointed his right hand toward the sky. Suddenly a formation appeared in the heavens, as terrible swords chiming and reverberating between heaven and earth. Infinite divine swords were gathered within the formation, unleashing astonishing sword will. Each sword contained god-punishing power, which was enough to destroy all existence. Despicable! Cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy looked on coldly, and some of them commented audibly. While the Vajra region's divine child was still attacking, someone else had stepped in to attack Yi Futian as well. It is comical that the cultivators of the Divine Prefecture's ancient god clan had to join forces to fight against someone with a lower realm of cultivation, Fang Gai said sarcastically. However, the cultivator in the void responded. Don't worry, it's just a test, and we won't hurt him. We just wanted to see the level of ability Emperor Yi has achieved. As soon as the voice trailed off, the formation divine sword came down from the firmament, much like the power generated by the god-punishing swordsmanship. It aimed to destroy as it impacted the starry shield. What he did not say was that while they would spare Yi Futian's life, they would press him to his utmost limit, forcing him to reveal all of his abilities and methods. They wanted to see if there was anything hidden by the original realm's #1 genius talent. When the falling swords fell on the shield, fine fractures appeared on the surface of the shield. With more and more fractures appearing, and the giant palms of Vajra continued blasting down as well, those fine fractures now turned into considerable cracks. The divine punishment sword matrix of Yuanshi Palace is indeed horrific, and this is just a small sword matrix. The surrounding cultivators were not only observing Yi Futian's combat effectiveness, but they were also observing the strengths of those from the ancient god clan. Though they were aware of each other's existence before, many of them had never met, much less making any exchange with one another. Now, they could see the level of strengths possessed by these cultivators. Of course, they may not use all their methods all at once. They would be wise to keep some of their abilities to themselves. Bang! With continuous loud booms, the starry shield shattered. The terrifying god punishment sword and the overbearing giant palms of Vajra continued blasting down, chasing after Futian. Those in the Heavenly Mandate Academy were secretly worried when they witnessed this shocking battle scene. The opponents that Futian was facing now were all excellent peak figures. Chapter 2364, 1 against 2. Many attacks descended upon Futian. The crowd saw that his body was on the brink of being drowned out by the incoming attacks, but he didn't move an inch. He was seemingly unfazed by the frenzy of attacks. A dazzling spatial halo shone on top of his divine body of the Great Path. Runes emerged and formed doors of space with his body as the center. They surrounded his body, causing him to be enveloped within them. Rumble. The god-punishing swords charged downwards to annihilate Futian. Unfortunately, when they approached him, they entered into the doors of space directly. It was as though the swords disappeared into nothingness. However, they caused the doors of space to tremble violently. More savage attacks descended on Futian. The giant palms of Vajra charged towards him at the same time as the swords. However, with Futian's body as the center, the doors of space shone even more brightly and transformed into an independent region. It was the miniature world. Fawn Guy and Old Ma were somewhat emotional when they saw this scene. The miniature world was a divine spatial technique. Futian was actually able to utilize it to such an extent. From the looks of it, Futian had fully mastered all 7 great divine techniques of the Four-Corner Village. He had learned all their cruxes and was able to use them skillfully. The user of the miniature world could form an independent world from his surroundings. The miniature world could block off all attacks and ensure that the cultivator was free from all disturbances of the outside world. When cultivated to the highest level, the cultivator could form a miniature world around him and was completely isolated from the outside world. However, no cultivation technique was perfect. There was no such thing as an invincible divine technique. All techniques were either reinforced or restricted by other techniques. The might of a technique depended on its user. Even though the miniature world was powerful, it was not an almighty technique that could completely ignore all other attacks. As the god-punishing swords and the gigantic palms blasted on the miniature world consecutively, the doors of space also shook violently. Gradually, the doors of space were destroyed and disintegrated. Even so, they managed to block off most of the attacks. The collective attacks of the 2 cultivators were unable to break through Futian's defense. This scene caused Vajra Divine Child and the cultivators from the Yuanshi Palace to reveal astonished expressions. Futian had indeed cultivated many different techniques. Each and every one of them was extraordinary. He had most likely learned this particular technique from the Four-Corner Village. As expected, both the Ziwei Segmentum and the Four-Corner Village contained exceptional cultivation techniques. With the addition of the teachings of the great emperors, Futian was considered a walking treasure trove. As long as they could bring him under their control, they would have the chance to loot these treasures. Divine light radiated brightly on Futian's body. He shot up high into the sky. His pupils glistened with golden divine halos as he swept a glance at the 2 cultivators beneath him. Another domain of the Great Path appeared around him. The sun and the moon appeared simultaneously as the stars circled him. The entire world changed as divine phenomena occurred all around him. Right now, Futian seemed to be no longer suppressing his own power. His aura of the Great Path enveloped the vast space. This part of the world seemed to become his own domain. The stars that circled around him and the sun, moon, and yin-yang diagram high in the sky emanated a powerful aura. Buzz. The divine light of yin and yang rained down. It also contained powerful swords of catastrophe that collided with the god-punishing swords. They actually were no weaker than them. Although Futian's cultivation plane was a level lower, he mastered the power of yin and yang. Even against this god-punishing power, he could still hold his own. At the same time, starry stone tablets appeared. Countless runes and ancient characters were contained within them. The might of the tablets pressed down on the space and headed towards Vajra Divine Child. Countless divine tablets carved with ancient runes suppressed the space and clashed with the giant palms of Vajra. At the same time, a terrifying rumbling could be heard in the sky. Vajra Divine Child felt a powerful suppressive aura of the great path emanating from the sky and spreading towards him. He looked up and saw a slit appear on the horizon. In the sky above, a door from ancient times seemed to appear. It suppressed everything around it. At a glance, he seemed to be enclosed within this space. The door's suppressive power was astonishing. It was the gate of world suppression. Down below, Emperor, she glanced at the Millet Emperor beside him. The Millet Emperor had a look of relief in his eyes. Back in the day, the disciple he was most proud of was Zhong Chan. However, Zhong Chan had perished, being killed by Ninghua. Now, although Yi Futian could not be considered his disciple, he had inherited Millet Emperor's teachings. Yi Futian managed to unleash the power of the Gate of World Suppression to such an extent. He had far surpassed Zhong Chan in his heyday. If Zhong Chan witnessed this scene, he would most likely be pleased too. The facial expression of Vajra Divine Child turned serious. The Gate of World Suppression was a divine technique Yi Futian obtained through meditating in the Wangshan Watchtower. It was very powerful. Yi Futian modified the Gate of World Suppression based on his own understanding and cultivation style, making it more suitable. It could suppress a part of the sky. Similar to his other attacks, the Gate of World Suppression was a domineering power. Vajra Divine Child put his palms together. 10,000 Zhang golden divine halos burst forth. The majestic Vajra battle form glowed with even more frightening golden divine light, and its halos shone for 10,000 miles. Dang! With a loud clang, the gigantic battle form, akin to a god, raised his arm and sent out a palm strike. This endlessly big palm was engraved with countless Vajra runes. It was indestructible. It was the art of supreme attack of the Vajra region, the Vajra Divine Seal. In the sky above, the Vajra Divine Seal and the Gate of World Suppression collided. The sound of the collision echoed throughout the space. The Vajra Divine Seal radiated with brilliant halos as the entire palm shone brightly. It intended to eradicate everything that crossed its path. The Gate of World Suppression vanquished all attacks which it encountered. Both powers were extremely domineering. Rumble. An alarming sound thundered. The Vajra Divine Seal was shattered. The Gate of World Suppression followed suit and disintegrated. A terrifying storm swept out and covered the entire space. All the cultivators who had yet to unleash their powers did so now to block off the residue waves from the aftermath. "He is so strong!" exclaimed the cultivators who were standing below. They were impressed by the domineering attack. Their gazes all landed on the white-haired silhouette high in the sky above. The hearts of the cultivators from the Divine Prefecture all quivered violently. He actually was holding his own against two top-tier cultivators. Monstrous existences from the Vajra region and the Yuanshi domain were attacking him at the same time, and yet they still could not suppress him. He was fighting against the two of them alone, and his attack power was actually not weaker than that of the two powerful cultivators combined. Around them, many top figures were spectating the battle. Their hearts also stirred. The Heavenly Mandate Realm ruler, the top monstrous figure of the original realm, indeed had exceptional talent. He was peerless. Even in the entire Divine Prefecture, few people could compare to him. Shichiya was smiling. Before this, she had sparred with Yi Futian, so she knew clearly that wanting to take him down would not be so easy. During her battle with him, if she hadn't admitted defeat at the very last moment, the outcome of their battle would still be unknown. This was the result even with her going all out. How could these people possibly force Yi Futian to show his trump card easily? Unless a ninth-tier Renhuang shamelessly attacked him, these prominent figures would not be able to investigate Yi Futian's true ability without bringing out their strongest attacks. Chapter 2365. Something was off. There were also slight changes in the expressions of Vajra Divine Child as well as the air of the Yuanshi Palace. They seemed to have become slightly more serious. All the cultivators were watching this battle. They were the successors of the ancient god clan's two major factions, yet they actually could not take down Futian. The white-haired youth was attacking both of them at the same time alone. He was overwhelming them. It was as though the two of them acted as foils for Futian. Thinking about this, their eyes burned even brighter. Vajra Divine Child put his hands together, and immediately, rumbling sounds could be heard all around them. The divine sound of the great path seemed to circle them. Golden halos filled the space, dyeing this part of the sky golden. Buzz! Vajra Divine Child's figure leaped high up into the sky. His figure stood below the golden sky. He had a solemn expression as he put his hands together. After the golden divine light dyed the sky, the crowd saw a face appear. It seemed to be the face of the ancient god of the Vajra region. Endless golden halos rained down and enveloped the space. It was the Vajra Dominion. When the cultivators of the divine prefecture in the distance saw this scene, their hearts trembled. From the looks of it, Vajra Divine Child was getting serious. He had actually unleashed the Vajra Dominion. The Vajra region ancient god clan was a force in the Vajra domain. They were established by an ancient great emperor. Currently, the cultivation grounds of the Vajra region were part of an independent world. The Vajra Dominion was passed down from the great emperor. It was a super powerful technique. Within the Vajra Dominion, everything would be bound. Anyone who wanted to escape had to shatter the Dominion first. It was extremely difficult to do so. Under the Vajra Dominion effects, the Vajra region's divine power could be unleashed to its most powerful state. Its might was overwhelming and without equal. Now, Vajra Divine Child was clearly unleashing his true ability, going all out against Futian. In another direction, another cultivator was still around. The heir of the Yuanshi Palace stared at the battlefield. The appearance of the Vajra Dominion somewhat affected him. However, since Vajra Divine Child had unleashed his strongest teachings, then the heir of the Yuanshi Palace would temporarily assume the support role and not unleash his mega battle matrix. He would first unleash a smaller matrix. After he considered this, the heir of the Yuanshi domain pointed a finger upwards. Immediately, streaks of divine light radiated in the sky. Ripples formed in different locations. They were similar to water ripples and propagated outwards. Soon, a pattern was formed from one of the ripples. Similar scenes occurred at different locations in the sky. More and more patterns took form, and sword will whizzed in the heavens and the earth. Sword will covered a vast space of 1,000 miles. The different patterns all ended up forming the same diagram. It was the God-punishing sword matrix. Each and every diagram was a God-punishing sword matrix. At a glance, there were 99 God-punishing sword matrices hanging in the sky. The power which loomed over the space was enough to destroy this part of the sky. It was menacing. The heir of the Yuanshi Palace pointed his finger at Futian. All 99 God-punishing sword matrices also pointed towards Futian. Instantly, Futian felt as though his spiritual soul had been locked in place. It was as though he had nowhere to run. No matter where he went, only one outcome awaited him: annihilation by the God-punishing swords. "This is still not the final form of the God-punishing sword matrix," commented someone from a top force of the Divine Prefecture. This God-punishing sword matrix had yet to reach its final form. If it was in its final form, it was similar to the battle form unleashed by Vajra Divine Child. The entire matrix would block out the sun and envelop the vast space. It would transform into a domain of the Great Path. When the God-punishing swords descended, all living beings would face their doom. Futian glanced at the sky above. Both cultivators had coalesced frightening powers and unleashed the art of supreme attacks. They were ready to kill him. However, even so, his facial expression remained calm and did not show many changes. He took a glance at the two cultivators. A formless aura was unleashed from his body and slowly permeated into the surrounding air. An independent region formed with his body as its center. In this region, the sun and the moon shone brightly at the same time. Stars flowed freely and obeyed their own rules. The region functioned with a different law compared to the outside world. Dazzling halos burst forth from his body and resonated with heaven and earth. "Ha!" Shichiao looked towards where Futian was. She faintly sensed something. During her battle with Futian, he unleashed some power at the very last minute. She was not able to clearly sense what it was that time. Futian's current state was similar to that during their previous battle. Her gaze was dead fixed on him. She was curious whether or not the cultivators from the Vajra region and the Yuanshu palace could defeat Futian. The rhythm of the great path circled them. The ancient god of the Vajra region, which loomed over the sky, moved. Instantly, brilliant divine light radiated. The next moment, the heavens and the earth shook as though the sky was collapsing. Endless Vajra divine seals charged downward with an imposing momentum. At this moment, it was as though the sky was about to be crushed into pieces. Endless Vajra divine seals blasted towards Futian simultaneously. This scene was spectacular. All the cultivators who were witnessing the battle on the sidelines felt their hearts tremble in fear. The sky was shaking violently as though it was on the verge of crumbling. The endless Vajra divine seals were capable of annihilating all existences. Who could stand against them? In an instant, the Vajra divine seals crashed down towards where Futian was. They directly plummeted towards his figure. The space where Futian stood appeared to immediately shatter, including Futian's figure within it. Rumble. A terrifying scene appeared where Futian was. Countless Vajra divine seals crashed down and drowned out this part of the sky. It seemed as though they could not be blocked at all. However, Futian merely glanced at them. His gaze was steady. The next moment, the Vajra divine seals that rumbled intensely as they came crashing towards him suddenly slowed down. The speed of such an attack was incredibly fast. It would have killed Futian before he could think. However, right then, the various cultivators could clearly sense that the falling Vajra divine seals were slowing down. It seemed as though some power of the great path was slowing them down. Moonlight shone down and enveloped the space. It brought with it an extreme chill. It was as though the space was frozen solid. There was also the power of space acting on this area. Within this area, the laws of the great path seemed to be different than that of the outside world. In here, Futian was in absolute control. Even when such an overwhelmingly powerful attack entered into this domain of the great path, the effect of the power in the domain on it was much greater than that of the outside world. Buzz. Divine light rained down and encapsulated the Vajra divine seals. The divine seals were coated in a layer of cold frost. Even so, the frightening Vajra divine seals still descended upon Futian with terrifying rumbling sounds, intending to crush him. Just then, the stars that were orbiting non-stop in the sky immediately collided with these Vajra divine seals. The stars shattered the seals in one great sweep. These Vajra divine seals did not seem as powerful as people imagined them to be as they shattered. "What is going on?" exclaimed some cultivators. They were stunned as they gazed at the scene in astonishment. Something was off. "It's the boundary wheel!" a top-level cultivator from the ancient god clan exclaimed. They looked at Futian and his surroundings and saw that invisible current had turned into a boundary wheel. "Yes, it is indeed the boundary wheel. The Vajra dominion of the Vajra divine child is also considered boundary wheel. But there are some differences. His boundary wheel is centered on his body and spread outward, almost invisible. However, the domain of that boundary wheel is self-contained, like a world that was his domain," someone explained. The boundary wheel overlapped with the Great Path domain, and in that sense, the boundary could be defined as a domain. The Vajra divine child could very well overpower any space with his divine wheel and turn it into the face of Vajra region's ancient god. In this Vajra dominion, the Great Path power derived from the Vajra region would be unimaginably powerful, and he could exert his might to the fullest extent. His attacking method was fierce and invincible. If it were before, perhaps even Futian would have some difficulty resisting those endless attacks that came from the sky. Infinite Vajra divine seals each contained the power to annihilate a world. With endless divine seals blasting down at the same time, their potency was almost apocalyptic. But at this moment, just when these attacks creeping toward Futian and entered into the field around him, they slowed down unexpectedly, and their power seemed to weaken as well. They were first frozen by ice, then pulverized soon after. It was reasonable to believe that they must have entered within the domain of Yi Futian's boundary wheel. Lying therein was Yi Futian's world. The great path that he controlled was more than powerful, so much so that it could affect and weaken the Vajra divine seals considerably, thereby destroying them. Generally speaking, a boundary wheel will not have such power unless his boundary wheel is different from the others. Some cultivator who had been through the divine tribulation of the great path said in a low voice. He was following the development in that area closely. Well, similar to levels of suppression, Yi Futian's divine wheel of the great path might be of a higher level than that of the divine child, thus achieving the great path's suppression. Therefore, even at a lower realm, he was able to block, even destroy the powerful attacks from his opponent with ease. Someone else commented, analyzing Yi Futian's ability and making sense of what they were seeing. At this moment, these top cultivators were even more interested in Yi Futian. As a matter of fact, Yi Futian was harboring some secrets. That was why everything about him was so different from the others. What kind of existence was the Vajra divine child? He was the heir of the Vajra region, possessing the divine power of all of the Vajra region. His offensive attacks were extremely overbearing and rarely find another who was worthy to compete with him. However, for such an existence to be suppressed by Yi Futian on the level of their boundary wheels, the reasoning behind this amazing phenomenon was provocative enough. This was something of which Shi Qiao had become keenly aware. She recalled the curious feeling that she felt at the last moment of her fighting with Yi Futian. In truth, it was exactly as they had said. She was facing the same situation that the Vajra divine child currently was. At the time, she used the eyes of the West Emperor to create a great path domain, and thought it was enough to suppress and crush Yi Futian outright, but she was unable to do so. At the very last moment, a strange sensation manifested, which was probably due to the reason these top figures had concluded. Yi Futian controlled the unique divine wheels of the great path, possibly with much higher levels of capabilities for him to suppress the divine wheels of the Vajra divine child in this fashion. Under this kind of condition, even though the realm of the Vajra divine child was higher than Yi Futian, his offensive attacks failed to touch Yi Futian. Moreover, those endless Vajra divine seals had disintegrated instead. The cultivators from West Imperial Palace stole a glance at Shi Qiao. This goddess of West Imperial Palace must have gotten some hints of it in the previous battle, which would explain her willingness to cultivate at the Heavenly Mandate Academy. In the battlefield, the divine child of the Vajra region looked really bad when he saw what was happening. Those golden eyes pierced through the space and fell on Yi Futian. His attacks were blocked so readily that countless divine seals now shattered and disintegrated, unable to pose any threat to Yi Futian at all. In the meantime, on the other side, the heir of Yuanshi Palace was equally disturbed at this sight. Was Yi Futian as strong as this? He was aching to see whether his attacks could upend Yi Futian. With a wave of the hand, rays of sword lights shot out from the god-punishing sword matrix in the sky above. Countless sword lights came down at the same time as if intending to annihilate the space, and that everything would then be broken and destroyed. All would turn to nothing under the swords, even the area of the great path would be no exception. Psst! A sharp and piercing sound was heard as god-punishing swords came down, entering the area of the great path that surrounded Yi Futian. In the next moment, those destructive swords suddenly decreased in speed and were covered with layers of frost. Even though the swords were still continuing their downward momentum, shredding the power of the great path as they went, aiming directly at Yi Futian, they were very much affected. Yi Futian waved his hand, and the divine light of the sun and the moon spilt, carrying the destructive shadow/solar divine sword. It aimed straight toward the downward-moving god-punishing swords. And as they collided, the invading swords were obliterated. Sure enough, the god-punishing swords of Yuanshi Palace suffered the same fate as the Vajra divine seals. As soon as any of them invaded into the dominion around Yi Futian, its effect was affected and began to weaken. In that dominion, Yi Futian's power of the great path seemed to increase, easily blocking their aggressive attacks. This also meant that an attack at this level couldn't even get close to Yi Futian, let alone defeat him. Around them, those top cultivators from Divine Prefecture, who had surrounded the battlefield, looked on. Their bodies dazzled with divine light, filling this space with their fighting will. They seemed eager to jump in, to see for themselves just how strong Yi Futian's dominion was, and what level of power could he withstand. No matter how powerful any dominion was, it was highly unlikely to be totally indestructible. As long as the offensive power was great enough, they thought, even the entire dominion could be destroyed just the same. "Want to give it a try?" said someone whose eyes never deviated from the battlefield. His interest was piqued. This method must be what Yi Futian was ultimately relying on. This level of ability would be hard to undermine even by top figures in the 8th realm. At this moment, these two major cultivators could not defeat Yi Futian, not even close. "Let's wait," someone else replied, choosing to continue observing rather than take action. The Vajra Divine Child and the heir of Yuanshi Palace had not been pushed to their limits yet. At present, everyone else was a little curious as to how this battle would end. At this moment, the Vajra Divine Child put his hands together. An immense divine light shot out from his body, which then merged into the divine phantom that hovered above the firmament. There seemed to be horrific divine sounds that lingered between heaven and earth. Immediately after, horrific divine light appeared. This golden divine light possessed terrifying penetrating power, which now honed in on Yi Futian. In the next moment, a massive and boundless arm appeared above the sky. This arm covered the sky and the sun, like a stone pillar that came from the sky, heading towards Yi Futian, who was on the ground below. The arm went forward, and a frightening giant palm of Tianshan slammed out. A terrifying booming roared in the space, seemed to signify the impending collapse of this world. Even the entire void was trembling now. Witnessing what had just taken place, everyone knew that this Vajra region's divine child was now determined to win, and he wanted to break down Yi Futian's dominion to defeat him. Chapter 2367, 9th Realm joining in. The arm came down all the way, penetrating directly into the great path domain around Yi Futian. Propelled by the Vajra divine power, it seemed that even the force of this great path domain was having difficulty affecting this Tianshan arm. Shocking sounds of rumbling were heard, and the space was on the verge of shattering and collapsing. The stars within the great path domain were exploding, destroyed under the giant palm of Tianshan at the other end of that massive arm. The other end of the golden arm that had penetrated the void was directly connected to a golden body above the firmament, as the Vajra divine power continuously poured into it. When the arm slammed down, to those in the distance, it was as if a golden light beam had punctured the void, from the firmament downward, with unstoppable force. Boom! A vast radiant divine light erupted from Yi Futian. The divine light swept out with his body as the source, obscuring the sky and the sun. Terrifying divine light wrapped up on that Tianshan arm, so the mobility and power of that arm were greatly affected. Even though it was still attacking towards the ground below, it was slowing down considerably. Behind Yi Futian, a series of exceptionally beautiful visions now appeared. Accompanied by a long trilling whistle, Yi Futian seemed to have morphed into the peacock demon god. His visage was now becoming even more wicked and scary, and an astonishing demonic energy rushed out from him. As hearts were beating violently, a majestic demonic power burst out as infinite divine light bloomed. Buzz! When the massive arm blasted down, it was blocked by the starry shield. The divine light of the stars that surrounded Yi Futian intertwined and formed an absolute superb defense around him. The arm blasted right on the shield, which caused it to shake violently, but the downward momentum of that Tianshan arm was also stymied. There was a loud bang, and cracks began to appear on the starry shield. It then shattered as the shield collapsed. The infinite Vajra divine power above the firmament was constantly pouring in until it finally broke down the shield. However, at the same time, that golden giant palm was shrouded by the supreme power of the shadow as well, with much of its power now diminished. Above the firmament, the golden divine glory continued to fall, pouring into the arm to restore its power. However, at this time, Yi Futian, who was within the starry light screen, was shining brightly all over, as if he had turned into an indestructible divine sword. The sword was surrounding his body, just as numerous starlight showered upon him, as well as the power of the demon god that was also covering his body. Under the support of multiple powers, Yi Futian's aura was rising frantically at this moment, Buzz! Countless divine lights shot out toward that massive arm at the same time. They converged into a single beam that unified and turned into a sword. This sword strike pierced through the void and heaven and earth, hitting the giant palm of Tianxin in an instant. At the moment when the two attacks connected and collided, time and space seemed to have stopped. Soon after, countless rays of light shot into the giant palm as golden light diffused and filled the sky. The giant handprint started to crack as Sword Will rushed into it frantically, invading Tianxin's arm through these cracks, intending to perforate it through and through. Sizzle! A frightening Sword Will followed that golden arm and creeping upward. Everyone saw that Tianxin's arm split open. At the same time, a shocking sword light burst from the split arm, rushing high into the sky, and blasted directly at that divine figure above the firmament. Boom! Boom! The Tianxin arm now pulverized and exploded with madness, and the arm crumbled. Vajra Dominion shook crazily in the void under that monstrous sword might, and it was leaving the Vajra Divine Child a little pale. Futian raised his head to take a look. Then, a beam of light rushed into the sky. It was his body now that traveled as a sword. All the crowd saw was a sword light penetrating the void, directly blasting on the divine figure above. There was a crystalline crunching sound that was clearly audible. Everyone saw a sword that traversed heaven and earth. Some fractures appeared on that Tianxin phantom in the void, as the Vajra Dominion was totally shaken up. On the battlefield, Futian didn't seem to have moved a single inch. He was still standing where he was as if it had not been him who had made the attack just now. However, Futian's entire body dazzled. His physical body was the sword body of the Great Path, surrounded by endless starlight. With a turning of his mind, everyone saw yet another sword rushed into the sky with impeccable swordsmanship. The distance of space was non-existent. The body was the sword. Boom! Another sword blasted upon the Vajra Dominion, and then the third strike, the fourth. In a short period of time, it seemed that countless sword strikes had pierced through heaven and earth. And all of them slammed on the Vajra Dominion. That dominion, which contained indestructible divine power of the Vajra region, began to show more and more fissures. The impact of what was taking place in front of them was indescribably shocking. Countless swords seemed to be connected from sky to earth, hitting every location of the Vajra Dominion. If this continued, the Great Path domain of the Vajra region would inevitably collapse. In that case, the divine wheel of the Vajra Divine Child would probably be broken. Many cultivators looked in the direction of the Divine Child, and saw that golden face was revealing hints of struggle as if he was in some pain. Finally, accompanied by a muffled groan, with the turning of his thoughts, the infinite divine light disappeared in an instant, and the Vajra Dominion vanished as well. That endless divine light submerged into his body like mad, and he dared not continue. The Vajra Divine Child has been defeated, everyone thought as they witnessed the incredible scene that had just taken place in front of them. Under the joint efforts of these two major cultivators, the Vajra Divine Child was suppressed and had to withdraw his Great Path domain, which clearly suggested that he could no longer bear Futian's attack. If he were to insist on continuing the battle, even his divine will might collapse and shatter. Futian looked towards the direction of the Vajra Divine Child but did not continue his attack. In another direction, the heir of Yuanshi Palace did not continue his attack either. The offensive and defensive techniques of the Vajra region were known to be incredibly fierce and overpowering, but even the Vajra Dominion was now broken up. Even if he were to continue, it would be unlikely for him to defeat Futian. This number one genius talent in the original realm was mighty indeed. The other cultivators in the vicinity focused on Futian. It seemed that Futian could not be suppressed until they take some action. The Dominion force released just now by Futian was considerable, and they still didn't know if it had even close to Futian's limit. Not bad, someone praised. A top figure from Divine Prefecture looked at Futian and asked. The reputation of the number one genius in original realm was well deserved. Emperor Yi has infinite potential, and I can see that the dominion of Emperor Ye's cultivation is truly extraordinary. I wonder how this divine wheel of the Great Path was cast? Futian looked at the person who spoke and saw he was also a powerful existence from the ancient god clan, a supreme cultivator from infinite mountains. He was a top Renhuang who cultivated at the infinite mountains. Moreover, he was of the ninth realm. The aura that was being released by him was elusive yet terrifying. This great path domain was cast by his natal spirit. He wouldn't be so crazy as to divulge that. So, he did not bother to respond. Those cultivators were still hanging around the surrounding space. Since they had come with bad intentions, he felt like he didn't need to bother with common courtesy either. The cultivator from Infinite Mountains smiled when he saw that Futian didn't answer him. With a wave of his palm, infinite divine swords appeared between heaven and earth instantly, pointing directly at Futian. Even a peak Renhuang of the ninth realm was making a move now. If so, I am going to have to see for myself just how strong is Emperor Ye's cultivation. Despicable creature! A voice shouted as someone rushed straight into the sky, heading towards the sky above. It was Blind Tai. A peak Renhuang of the ninth realm had dared attack Futian. All the cultivators from Divine Prefecture cast a glance at Blind Tai. A humongous and boundless handprint appeared above the sky, then blasted down on Blind Tai. It was from a Renhuang of the ninth realm from Futian clan. His clothing fluttered, and he had an extraordinary temperament. With a raise of his hand, he managed to suppress the void with a single palm strike. Blind Tai shouted angrily, and his whole body was radiant, as the divine glory upon him skyrocketed. A divine hammer appeared, smashing into the giant palm that came slamming down. Loud booming sounds were heard as a dull groaning came from above the sky. Although Blind Tai impeded the other's attack, he was pushed back as well. His upward momentum stopped dead in its tracks. Buzz, buzz. In the direction of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, several Renhuang of the ninth realm levitated into the air. However, at this time many Renhuang from various principalities of the Divine Prefecture also stepped forward, blocking their way above the void, detaining them. This is a little overboard, Emperor, she said, as his figure was also moving upward. But an elder from Divine Prefecture interceded. It's just an exchange. There is no need to worry. Rest assured, the Divine Prefecture and the original realm is one, and we will not harm Emperor Yi. As he finished speaking, an invisible pressure of might shrouded the boundless space. Although the alliance of the Heavenly Mandate Academy was a strong one, it paled in comparison with the many forces from Divine Prefecture. Especially at the top level, it was nearly impossible for them to compete with the other. However, from a distance, cultivators were rushing this way one after the other. They were cultivators from the Lost Clan. As soon as they got wind of the situation here, more and more of them hurried to the Heavenly Mandate Academy. But the cultivators from the Divine Prefecture had isolated the battlefield, nor were they really that concerned about the cultivators from the Lost Clan. This was not the Shi continent, and without that super grand matrix, the arrival of the Lost Clan meant nothing and changed nothing. Above the firmament, in the vast expanse of space, the battlefield now stretched over a tremendous distance. After all, when someone at their caliber fought, just a wave of a hand could cover an area thousands of miles wide. The top figure from Infinite Mountains raised his hand, and countless divine swords dropped down from the sky, and every one of them was tremendously monstrous, aiming at Futian with the terrifying sound as they tore through the space. In the great path domain where these divine swords descended, there was some hindrance. But the person who made the move this time was someone in the ninth realm. Therefore, even the great path aura in the Dominion could not completely stop the divine swords. The stars flowed and shattered some swords, but those divine swords were everywhere in the sky, burying this corner of the sky without end. Boundless! Many looked up. Over there, the boundless divine child was of the ninth realm in this newest wave of engagement. If he took action, it would probably be impossible for Futian to compete with him. Nonetheless, this battle was no longer a fair fight. Futian was surrounded by a starry light screen, which created an absolute defense. But as that sky full of divine swords rained down, and loud rumbling sounds came out, the stars, including where Futian was, were knocked back then shattered. Futian kept retreating while the infinite divine swords between heaven and earth were still attacking forward. Bang, bang, bang! The divine swords blasted in front of Yi Futian's body and collided with him. Many divine swords crumpled, but Yi Futian was also knocked backward again as a muffled groan came out of him. A horrific storm of swordsmanship enveloped this corner of the sky, and the infinite divine swords suddenly stopped in the sky above Yi Futian, but still pointed at him. Boundless Divine Child was a supreme cultivator in the ninth realm, and he was reputed to be exceptionally talented. He was already a top cultivator in the boundless domain, so for him to take action against Yi Futian, who was in the seventh realm, was not an honorable deed. The cultivators from Heavenly Mandate Academy below watched with increased concern, but old Ma said, "Don't worry, he can handle it." Previously, he had gone to Four Corner Village with Yi Futian when Yi Futian brought back the body of Xinjiao the Great Emperor. Yi Futian would surely bring out the divine corpse in the battle if he were truly in danger. These people would have no way of dealing with that just yet. However, it was still a bit too much. "Emperor Yi doesn't plan to release the true form of the boundary wheel for us to see?" All the cultivators from Divine Prefecture stared at Yi Futian. They were waiting for him to reveal all his cards. They wanted to see all of the secrets that Yi Futian was harboring. However, even now, they still couldn't figure him out. "Don't worry, you have my word that you will not be harmed. We just want to see how strong you are," the boundless Divine Child continued. The vast space around them was surrounded by divine light, protecting Yi Futian inside. Yi Futian glanced at these cultivators. His eyes were cold to the extreme. He stretched out his hand, wanting to release the Emperor's corpse. "I know that you controlled the body of Xinjiao the Great Emperor, but if you are really thinking about using it, you must consider whether or not you would be able to keep it," someone said nonchalantly, with a slight suggestion of threat. These cultivators from Divine Prefecture were all plotting against Yi Futian for the Great Emperor's inheritance that he possessed. If Yi Futian were to unleash the body of the Xinjiao the Great Emperor, those cultivators who had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path would not simply stand by and watch. Clearly, Yi Futian understood this as well. He surveyed those people and asked, "So you are determined to force me to fight today?" Even now he still didn't want to offend these principalities from the Divine Prefecture too well. Under the current situation in the original realm, what he wanted the most was to cultivate quietly to improve himself. However, if these people from the Divine Prefecture wouldn't let him go, then he would have no choice but to unite the cultivators from the Lost Clan and fight back. "Just want to take a look at Emperor Ye's methods," said another cultivator from the Ancient God Clan, with divine light lingering. All of them were supreme cultivators. He continued, "Here, today, this may be the best of the best from the Divine Prefecture." As Yi Futian surveyed these cultivators, invisible currents from him swept toward the boundless space, moving in at these cultivators. At this moment, these peak figures from the Divine Prefecture had a look of curiosity. It seemed that Yi Futian finally decided not to cover up his boundary wheel. Boom, boom, boom. Brilliant divine light surrounded these cultivators as they gathered around Yi Futian. Every one of their auras were beyond terrifying, and their majestic style was second to none. When the divine light of the Great Path bloomed, a horrific aura condensed and emerged. They were ready to take action. However, right now, above the firmament, there was a sudden shower of divine light. This divine light was incomparably radiant and fell directly on the battlefield as if coming from outside the sky. "What?" Those top figures from Divine Prefecture looked into the sky. They were completely unaware of anyone coming. Every divine consciousness now aimed toward the sky and saw that in that sky full of divine light, there was a figure who now walked towards the battlefield below. In the midst of the endless divine light, a woman emerged, like Jyotian goddess, who descended with divine glory. She bathed in the warm glow of the sun, with magnificent stature and a face that was incomparably ravishing. She was arrogant, noble, and elegant, as if she was not of this world. When their eyes beheld her, many cultivators from Heavenly Mandate Academy gasped. They watched the goddess who appeared above the sky with disbelief and shock. Yi Futian was showered with endless divine glory as he raised his head to look above the firmament. When he saw the goddess who came with this incomparable divine light, he could no longer look away. Chapter 2369, We Meet Again. Who is she? The cultivators from Divine Prefecture secretly marveled at her. As they looked at Yi Futian, it seemed that her eyes were fastened on him as well. Yi Futian was also looking at her. This white-haired Renhuang who stood high above the void, the premier genius talent of Heavenly Mandate Realm, the college chief of Heavenly Mandate Academy, Palace Lord of Ziwei Imperial Palace, Master of Four Corner Village, and the heir of Ziwei the Great, Xinjiao the Great Emperor, as well as Shinin the Great. At this moment, in those arrogant eyes of his, there was nothing but endless tenderness. An extremely brilliant smile appeared at the corners of his eyes. The smile was so pure, and the eyes so clear. It was hard to imagine that someone who had cultivated to a level such could still be capable of such pure emotions. Even those who were not connected understood that the woman who appeared must be Yi Futian's beloved. The beautiful eyes of the goddess who appeared in the void stared back at Yi Futian. The two looked at each other across the void, sharing an infinite affection for one another. She smiled with such beauty, without that coldness or pride, and without that ethereal temperament. All that was left was pure and simple beauty. At this moment, Yi Futian felt as if they were lifetimes away. In his mind, he couldn't help but think of the time when they laid eyes on each other for the first time. He knew that the one whom he had loved so deeply had finally returned to him as her whole self. Even though she had gone through the ordeal of the walk-in, she had found herself and come back to him. She is back. From the direction of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, Lord Taixian whispered to himself. More importantly, this was not the Hua Jieyu he had known from the Heavenly Mandate Academy once upon a time, but the Hua Jieyu that Yi Futian had always known and loved. She was quite different from when he had met her before. Back then, they had cautioned Yi Futian to be careful of Hua Jieyu. Back then, in the realm of Brahma's pure sky, the Empress's cultivation was at the peak of Renhuang, and the method of her cultivation was something peculiar. She had a secret method that had since been lost, and no one knew of its origin. Known as the 3,000 realms of one mind, it had the means to walk in or seize another person's physical entity for the user's own purpose. They believed then that Hua Jieyu had been used by the Brahma's pure sky empress, and they worried that Yi Futian might be entrapped and also end up being used by her. Hua Jieyu, at that time, was indeed an unfamiliar entity to Yi Futian, like a blank piece of paper. Yi Futian had been quietly guarding and looking after her. But now, seeing Hua Jieyu's smile, the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy realized that the wife Yi Futian had been missing had finally returned to him. It seemed that she had been right in heading over to Divine Prefecture at the time. And it seemed that in the battle where Yi Futian perished, she had already begun to recover from her trauma and had become self-aware. Not only did Brahma's pure sky empress fail to take over her consciousness, but she was also ultimately overtaken by Hua Jieyu instead. That year, the group that went to the Divine Prefecture had already returned to the Heavenly Mandate Academy, except Hua Jieyu. According to them, Hua Jieyu left to follow her own cultivation path, and no one knew where she went. Today, she returned alone, precisely when Yi Futian was besieged and suppressed by all the cultivators from the Divine Prefecture. Yi Futian couldn't help but smile. In addition to the gentleness in his eyes, there was also a touch of sadness. He wasn't sad about this moment but for all the years that had passed. In all those years, they had been apart more often than they had been together. Now they met again, after more than 20 years. "Fox, it's been a long time." Yi Futian smiled brightly and reached out with his hand. Even across the void, he instinctively reached out for her hand. Hearing this familiar and yet strange term of endearment, Hua Jieyu's eyes, which were full of bright smiles, suddenly filled with tears. 2 teardrops flowed down on her ravishing visage, leaving 2 wet trails on that delicate face. No one had called her Fox for what seemed like a lifetime. She hadn't heard it for too many years. This was from back when they were still so young. Now, they had experienced and been through so much together. "It has been a long time." Hua Jieyu smiled as she cried. She moved toward Yi Futian. This distance, short though it may be, seemed to be thousands of miles long. After deaths and separations, she was forced to cultivate after being invaded by the Empress. In an attempt to help her reclaim her memories, Futian took her to all the places they had been when they were together. However, when she woke up again, what she saw was Futian besieged and slaughtered. For her, it was unspeakably traumatic. Decades were nothing but a blink of an eye in the cultivation world. No one else could know what these 2 decades meant to her. When she woke up, he was already gone. Her body moved in the direction where Futian was. Surrounded by divine light, she was so exceptionally gorgeous. However, this happy scene was frowned upon by the cultivators from Divine Prefecture, who had laid siege on Futian. They had planned to deal with Futian once and for all, forcing him to release the last of his abilities so they could unearth his secrets. But just at the most crucial moment, they had been interrupted by the appearance of Hua Jiu. Her sudden appearance was too breathtaking to ignore. She came from outside of the firmament, surrounded by divine light, just like Jyotian goddess descending into this world. She came with an unparalleled light. However, she clearly was not the Jyotian goddess, a being from out of this world, but a woman who was Futian's beloved. Moreover, under the divine light from this woman, her aura was actually rather terrifying. It was the aura of a peak Renhuang with a perfect great path. The divine light was so dazzling that the onlookers felt they couldn't see anything clearly. Futian's beloved had a higher cultivation level than him? Futian himself was already the #1 genius talent in all of the heavenly mandate realm. He was extremely gifted. How could it be that his beloved was even stronger than him? The various forces in the Divine Prefecture had inquired into Futian's past and his cultivation history. They knew some things about him, and that he had a wife. However, as far as their information went, Futian's wife did not seem to be an outstanding character, so they did not bother to inquire further. They didn't know anything about Hua Jiu and had no clue why her realm was higher than Futian's. Only the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy knew anything about this. They knew that Brahma's pure sky empress was the one who made Hua Jiu. However, even if Brahma's pure sky empress was here, this shouldn't be the kind of aura she was capable of. They could feel that Hua Jiu appeared very different than how she used to. Futian and Hua Jiu walked towards each other with smiles on their faces. It was as if everyone that surrounded them had nothing to do with them. In their eyes, there were only the 2 of them. After experiencing many deaths and separations, they had finally met again after more than 20 years. They didn't intend to be separated again. Today, no matter who wanted to step between them, it would not happen. Not even those top enchanting figures from the Divine Prefecture could interfere. Seeing that Hua Jiu was about to enter this area, the cultivators from the Divine Prefecture glanced at her coldly. Soon after, the Vajra Divine Child was heard scolding her. "Get back!" His voice sounded like a mighty bell, resonating between heaven and earth. It seemed that the divine power of the Vajra region leaped out fiercely, slamming violently towards Hua Jiu. A series of Vajra divine seals had manifested in the space as if to vent the anger that he felt when he had been defeated by Futian. Hua Jiu lowered her head and cast a sideways glance at the Vajra divine child. At this moment, those beautiful eyes that had held endless tenderness suddenly became extremely icy. Infinite divine light erupted. In an instant, this vast world seemed to stand still, and those Vajra divine seals stopped dead in their tracks in the void as well. The eyes of the divine child were filled with great terror as countless images now invaded his divine consciousness. Above the firmament, divine light showered upon him. Boom! Hua Jiu continued to step downward, and the Vajra divine child groaned as his face turned pale and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 2370, Prearranged? This? What they saw in front of them horrified these cultivators. Great shocks were written all over their faces. Could she be this powerful? That was the Vajra divine child. Even with attacks fueled by the Vajra divine power, he could not get closer to his opponent. At the same time, the Vajra divine child was injured badly and was now vomiting blood. Before this, even Futian had not been able to achieve this result. It took a great battle for him to drive back the Vajra divine child in defeat. Even though Hua Jiu was a Renhuang of the 9th realm, the combat effectiveness of the Vajra divine child should be more than sufficient to deal with someone in the general vicinity of the ninth realm. Even if she was a genius cultivator of the ninth realm, he should not be defeated to this extent. It was obvious that Huajiayu's strength was extremely powerful. Attack of the spiritual soul. All the attention was now fixed on that peerless goddess. She was surrounded by divine light, like the Jyotian goddess who had made her presence known in the mortal world. With just a thought, she had severely injured the Vajra divine child, and no one knew how much of her strength had powered that attack. There is a will of the Emperor. Looking at that beautiful woman and sensing the divine light flowing about her, as well as her aura of the great path, many felt a hint of divine power. It was the will of the Emperor. On Huajiayu's person, there was also some will of the Emperor that could be detected. It was the same as those cultivators from the ancient god clan. She might have the inheritance of the great Emperor in her possession. Those cultivators from the divine prefecture who had survived the divine tribulation of the great path couldn't be more surprised. This woman, who had appeared out of nowhere, had exhibited such impressive fighting powers. Furthermore, her divine power was so strong that she was actually not any lesser than Shi Qiyao, the goddess of West Imperial Palace, who had previously fought in a friendly exchange with Yi Futian. It was important to note that Shi Qiyao was the most talented person from the West Imperial Palace in the past 1,000 years. She was most in sync with the inheritance of the West Emperor. She was in control of the eyes of the West Emperor, which demonstrated the power she had inherited. However, Huajiayu's aura was no lesser than Shi Qiyao, which could only indicate that she had also synced perfectly to the inheritance of a great emperor. It appears that she has gotten a wonderful opportunity in the land of divine prefecture. Someone whispered in the direction of the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Huajiayu had defeated the Brahma's pure sky empress and turned her thousands of incarnations into one, all of them unified inside her physical body. The Huajiayu they had seen years ago was already one with the Brahma's pure sky empress and all of her other incarnations. They didn't expect that after she departed for divine prefecture, she would have the chance to obtain imperial-level inheritance. This was truly fortuitous. Yi Futian and Huajiayu appeared to be cultivators with great fortunes, and such fortunate cultivators were an extreme rarity. However, Huajiayu didn't care about anyone else's gaze at this moment. After she repelled the Vajra divine child, she continued her way towards Yi Futian. Her eyes were still so gentle. Yi Futian, on the other hand, didn't care much about Huajiayu's current strength. None of that mattered. What was important was that she was back, in the truest sense of the word. Beneath the lingering divine light, Huajiayu walked into the crowd. At this moment, no one rushed in to stop her. Obviously, the strength she had just displayed was somewhat astounding. Her ability to repel the Vajra divine child with just a thought meant that her combat effectiveness was not any lesser than those Renhuang in the ninth realm from the ancient god clan. It would not be easy to stop her. Those few moments seemed like an eternity. It was as if after a long, long time, the two of them finally walked back onto the same path. Yi Futian looked at the face that was so close to him. It was so familiar, and his smile became even brighter. Huajiayu was just the same. It was as if all the beauty of the world was alive in her smile. The two of them held hands. There was too much they wanted to say to each other, yet not a word was uttered. Yi Futian reached out with his hand and stroked her cheek. All of this was like a dream. It must have been rough for her in divine prefecture all these years. However, the cultivators from the divine prefecture didn't seem to want to allow this beautiful scene to continue. Tyrannical auras suddenly descended, falling on the two of them, breaking that peaceful silence. We didn't expect Emperor Ye's path companion to be so outstanding. Since that's the case, let us see for ourselves what that's like, said a voice. The person who had spoken was the boundless divine child. When his voice fell, those countless divine swords once again slammed down from the void, heading straight for Yi Futian and Huajiayu. Huajiayu and Yi Futian were still staring at each other, not their heads. Buzz! On Huajiayu, an astounding divine light suddenly burst out, sweeping through all the surrounding space. Her long black hair flew in the wind, and in an instant, An amazing divine consciousness shrouded the boundless space. The entire spatial world was shrouded by an extraordinary telekinetic power. Those billions of divine swords that came down suddenly slowed down, and there was a hint that they were about to stop. It was as everything in this space threatened to stop dead in their tracks. When all the cultivators saw this, there was a slight trembling in their hearts. The boundless divine child was also a Renhuang of the ninth realm. Could his offensive power be so easily stymied? However, his expression remained unchanged. He scanned the area in front of him, raising his hand, then quickly pushed his hand down. Suddenly, infinite divine swords whistled and howled, overwhelming that corner of the sky. Hua Jieyu frowned slightly. She turned her head, and a touch of coldness flashed through her eyes. At this moment, she seemed different than how she was before. The divine light lingered as her mind connected with heaven and earth. Her eyes swept towards the billions of divine swords that covered the sky and the sun. In an instant, this space seemed to stand still as those endless divine swords clamored, wanting to come in for the kill, but they couldn't move an inch. That oppressive force blocked the momentum of the divine swords, making this space even more suppressed. Donk! Boundless divine child stepped forward. At the same time, the other cultivators from Ancient God Clan who were around him took action as well. Supreme and awesome divine power of the Great Path spread out from them, suppressing the two people in the center of it all with total aggression. Even if she was a peak figure in the ninth realm, what could she do? She still couldn't stop their attack on Futian. However, at this time, above the firmament, there was a terrifying aura that emerged. The top figures from the divine prefecture were the first to act. They frowned and glanced above when they felt the presence of a frightening storm. Someone else is here? They all felt a strange feeling now. Then, a terrifying aura fell from the sky, and there was a shocking demonic might that tossed and roared. Everyone looked up into the sky and saw that a mighty procession had come into their view. People from the devil world? The cultivators from Divine Prefecture scanned the area high above the sky, wondering if the cultivators from the devil world had come to meddle in these affairs as well. However, when the group descended, they realized that it didn't seem to be the same group from the devil world as before but was instead another group of people. It seemed that they were other cultivators from the devil world. Furthermore, the person in the lead was not the Devil Emperor's direct disciple, Xiao Mu, nor was he the demon sage from the devil world. He was another young man, strapping and substantial. He was draped in a black demonic armor, and he was completely pitch black in appearance with a head of long black hair that fell upon his shoulders. A sense of immense dominance exuded from his entire body. This cultivator also appeared to be quite young, so who could this be? The cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy showed a look of disbelief when they saw this young man. Did they all make a pact to come back together on this day? Chapter 2371 Together Again. Those who cultivated at the Heavenly Mandate Academy were familiar with this newcomer on the scene. He and Futian used to be inseparable. He was his best brother in arms. Although his reputation was not as well known as Futian's, the old-timers at Heavenly Mandate Academy were well aware that his combat effectiveness was extremely powerful, not any less than Futian. Moreover, the Devil General, Mei Ting, had once come to the Heavenly Mandate Academy just for him. Later, when Du Donglu and the others departed for the Divine Prefecture, they took him to the Devil World. Now Hua Jieyu, who had been cultivating in the Divine Prefecture alone, had returned. Yu Sheng, who had been cultivating in the Devil World, did the same. All this seemed to be a coincidence, but more likely it was not. Because the original realm was now mired in turmoil, cultivators from all of the worlds had descended. Whether it was Hua Jieyu, who cultivated in the Divine Prefecture, or Yu Xing from the Devil World, they must have heard something about what was happening now. Therefore, it was not surprising for them to show up at this critical juncture. Currently, the attention of all the worlds was focused squarely on the original realm. What's his position in the Devil World? The cultivators wondered as they assessed Yu Xing. With so many cultivators from the Devil World guarding him in the center, Yu Xing received some very special treatment. It was similar to when Xiao Mu had descended on the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Could it be that he was also accepted as a direct disciple by the Devil Emperor? But it didn't add up. Before Yuxing had gone to the Devil World to cultivate, Mei Ting, the Devil General, had personally arrived in the Heavenly Mandate Academy to find him for the express purpose of taking him to the Devil World. This meant that Yuxing already had some relationship with the Devil World even before he had gone there. His status in the Devil World may have something to do with his origin. If so, what was Yuxing's true status? If Yuxing's origin was unusual or extraordinary in any way, then what about Futian? How did the two of them get to know each other? Why did they grow up together? And what was hidden in their shared history? Futian looked there as well, bright smiles in his eyes. This guy had come back. And he was different than before. The hefty dude who used to follow him around was now someone filled with boundless domineering spirit. Like himself, Yuxing was now a peak Renhuang, standing at the top of the cultivation world. He must have made great progress in the Devil World. It seemed that he had made the right decision to go there. However, Futian couldn't help but wonder who his foster father was. And Yuxing, what was his relationship with the Devil World? However, none of this was important at the present moment. Surely, he would know the answers in the future. The most important thing was that his beloved and his best friend had both returned to his side. It felt just like many, many years ago. Yuxing! Futian called with a smile. Yuxing! When those people from the top forces in the Divine Prefecture heard this name, they remembered someone. During their investigation into Futian's past, they had uncovered another person who was also extremely outstanding. Compared to Futian's wife, Hua Jieyu, this person was far more eye-catching. They knew that this person had grown up alongside Futian, always by his side. More importantly, it was said that his combat effectiveness was extraordinary, comparable to Futian's. Later on, when a group of people from the Heavenly Mandate Academy departed for the Divine Prefecture, he disappeared. Rumor had it that he was handpicked by the Devil General of the Devil World himself. Because of his supreme demonic talent, he was taken to the Devil World to cultivate. It was very possible that he was destined to be a demonic cultivator. Now, he had returned. And from his aura and where he was standing, everyone realized that he must have achieved an extraordinary position in the Devil World. Could it be that he was a really direct disciple of the Devil Emperor? If so, it meant that his demonic talent was much higher than imagined. Otherwise, he would not have been taken to the Devil World, where he was valued by the Devil Emperor himself. However, the eyes of some cultivators from the ancient god clan flickered. They seemed to be considering another possibility. All this was way too strange, to say the least. If Yuxing had such an extraordinary talent, Futian must be the same. Both of them were top genius talents in the world, and the existence of just one of them was already a rare enough find. Not even the ancient god clan could find anyone as outstanding as this. But for two such extraordinary figures to appear in the same place, and having grown up together, it was intriguing, to say the least. They returned to their previous conclusion that there must be something secretive about Futian's origin. What kind of secrets was he harboring? This is getting more and more interesting. Shichia watched everything with those beautiful eyes of hers, a smile on her face. First with Hua Jieyu, then the arrival of Yuxing with the cultivators from the Devil World. The situation here was becoming more precarious by the minute. As soon as Yuxing heard Futian's voice, he stepped into the void. Though he did not say a word, he was walking in the direction where Futian was. Behind him, peak characters from the Devil World watched him quietly without following. Who would dare provoke the Devil World when they were standing guard here? These people from the Divine Prefecture were not that fearless just yet. Yuxing traversed through the crowd to enter the battlefield until he was next to Futian and Hua Jieyu. Obviously, he had already seen Hua Jieyu, and he was indescribably happy to see the two of them back together again. Not too bad. Your cultivation has caught up with mine. Futian punched Yuxing jokingly, a bright sunny smile on his face. He thought that his cultivation speed was extremely fast already, coupled with many fortuitous adventures and his having received the inheritance from several great emperors. Each time, it had sped up his cultivation considerably. But Yu Xing's cultivation was comparable to his. Yu Xing was now also a renhuang in the 7th realm. Yi Futian had no idea how his cultivation had come about. Hua Jieyu's cultivation was strong, but she was an exception as this was not the result of normal cultivation. Yu Xing's cultivation should be something that was achieved more traditionally. Yu Sheng, however, revealed a rare smile. He was extremely happy in his heart that they finally got to see each other again. As for his cultivation, after he had gone to the devil world, the cultivation resources at his disposal were not something that Yi Futian could have imagined, so his progression was very speedy. He had thought that Yi Futian would have fallen behind. "I'm late," said Yu Xing. His first words were to blame himself for not getting there in time. Here, Yi Futian was being besieged and bullied by these pieces of garbage from the divine prefecture. Since birth until now, Yi Futian had always been his soft spot. When they were young, it had always been Yi Futian who protected him in front of his father. But since their youth, he had been the one who protected Yi Futian when they were away. His father always said that he was born to be a general and that he must guard the man in front of him with his life. This had become an instinct for him, and he had never wavered in this belief. Furthermore, everything Yi Futian had done for him convinced him that this was the right thing to do. Their brotherhood was forged by life and death. Either one of them would be more than willing to protect the other no matter the cost. "You are not late. Just in time, actually," Yi Futian said with a laugh. "It's been many years. You and I have not fought together. Today, bullies here intend to do their worst just because their cultivation is greater than mine. Now that you are here, we could take them on together." Not only did these people from Divine Prefecture not backing down, they even attempted to harm Hua Jieyu in their pursuit to continue persecuting him. It seemed that this battle was unavoidable. "Good," Yu Xing nodded. Just as before, no nonsense, just a simple word of acknowledgement. Chapter 2372, Heavenly Demon Godly Advent. When those top figures heard Yi Futian's words, they were still tranquil. There was not much change in their appearances. Hua Jiyu in the 9th realm, Yu Xing in the 7th realm, and Yi Futian, who was also in the 7th realm. Did just the three of them really intend to take on these top figures from the Divine Prefecture? Although the Vajra Divine Child and the heir of Yuanshi Palace had been defeated previously, they were two cultivators in the 8th realm. Among those who came from the Divine Prefecture, there were still many who had not yet taken action until now. None of these people could be considered weak. They had cultivators in the 9th realm as well. How could Yi Futian and the other two fight that? Even though Hua Jieyu exhibited some supreme combat effectiveness, it was still not enough. It would take at least several times this strength to defeat all of these challengers. As things stood now, it was not even close. At this time, Yi Futian surveyed the cultivators and said, "I didn't want to provoke anyone, but all of you who came from the Divine Prefecture insisted on being aggressive. In the name of wanting to examine my cultivation, you know what it is that you are really after. Since you are aching for a fight, I have no choice but to oblige. In addition, you are all at a higher realm than me. Even Peak Renhuang in the 9th realm did not hesitate to bully me. Under these circumstances, know that I will give it all that I've got." At that level of cultivation, the gap between 9th realm and the 7th realm was a vast chasm. For the boundless divine child in the 9th realm to raise his hand against Yi Futian was something dishonorable. Those from the Divine Prefecture were quite indifferent when they heard what Yi Futian had to say. Maybe he would fight using the body of Xinjiao the Great Emperor? Perhaps this was the only way for Yi Futian to possibly shake them. However, if Yi Futian were to do so, no one knew what kind of great battle would erupt. Clang! At this moment, a violent sound suddenly rang out between heaven and earth. In the vast space, an incomparably gorgeous golden divine glory bloomed. Everyone was taken by surprise. As their eyes turned to look in the direction of the light, they realized it was where the Vajra Divine Child was located. At this moment, the clothing covering the upper body of the Vajra Divine Child exploded and revealed a golden body. Countless divine lights were lingering upon this body, faintly forming a pattern that circulated inside him. How could this be? The cultivators from Divine Prefecture stirred. He is urging the secret arts to coax forth all of his combat effectiveness. The cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy watched with close attention. All the cultivators from the ancient god clan had many tricks up their sleeves that contained amazing strength. The Vajra divine child was no different. His cultivation was in the 8th realm. With a title like the divine child, his defensive and offensive techniques were understandably unparalleled. But previously, he was defeated by Futian, followed by an injury inflicted by Huajiayu's mind strike. How could someone as proud as him endure what had just happened? To him, today's battle was utterly humiliating. For that reason, the Vajra divine child did not hesitate to resort to the secret arts. The cultivators from the Vajra region were solemn when they witnessed what was happening before them. They did not attempt to stop him. Clearly, they knew what the divine child was trying to do, but this was his own choice. In this battle, win or lose, it was all on him. After all, this confrontation was instigated by the cultivators from the divine prefecture first. Boom! Infinite divine light erupted from him, covering the boundless space. The Vajra dominion appeared once again, shrouding this corner of the sky. However, with the blooming of Vajra, the figure of the divine child seemed to have disappeared. Or rather, he had reincarnated as the god of the Vajra region, who was now part of heaven and earth. An infinitely massive divine shadow appeared. Before this, the shadow was controlled and attacked by the Vajra divine child, but at this moment, the two merged into one. In the vast world, infinite golden divine light was pouring into his body. Above that godlike figure, infinite divine power was pouring into it as well. The aura was more terrifying than before. It far surpassed anything capable by the mere existence of Renhuang in the 8th realm. It was as if he had transcended his existing realm. Horrific divine light shot out from the eyes of the Vajra divine god, swept over Futian and the two others. He must avenge his shame. In the far distance, the cultivators inside Heavenly Mandate's city were truly shocked by what they saw. What was going to happen in this battle? The three of them glanced in the direction of the Vajra divine child, and their expressions did not change one little bit. As divine glory shining, hovering in front of Futian, he said to Yusheng, "Yusheng, how about you direct the fight?" "No problem." Yusheng nodded in acknowledgement. Immediately, Futian levitated into the air, sitting cross-legged. Wisps of divine glory now permeating between heaven and earth, and the sound of rhythm could be heard. In the vast space, suddenly, traces of the great past Guqin music could be detected. A brilliant divine light twinkled, and it was none other than the Guqin named Yearning that appeared in front of Futian. When Yearning appeared, all the strings of the great path in the space seemed to light up with even more radiant divine light, intertwined with the Guqin itself. The cultivators from the divine prefecture could clearly feel the real divine power contained within that instrument. Guqin from Shinin the Great! This Guqin was acquired by Futian on the dragon turtle, inherited from Shinin the Great. He had never used it in any of the battles before, but no one dared to underestimate the power behind this Guqin. This was a bona fide divine item, which contained the soul of Shinin the Great. It was, in a sense, the continuation of Shinin the Great's life force. Futian had already said that he would do all that he could, and it seemed that he was being serious. With cultivators in the 9th realm taking shots at him, who could fault him even if he was resorting to a divine item? Huajiayu saw Futian taking out the Guqin, as she stood quietly by Futian's side, with amazing divine light also blooming on her, moving between heaven and earth. Her clothing lightly fluttered. It was just as if the Jiutian goddess herself was guarding him. Yusheng stepped forward and standing out in front. He raised his head and glanced at the Vajra ancient god above the firmament. A shocking demonic light emitted from his eyes. Boom! Traces of shocking demonic light bloomed from Yusheng, heading toward this world. Likewise, a force was also being urged inside his body, which strengthened his aura as it continued to rise. The demonic might tossed and roared as an incomparable demon god appeared. With the aura of the great emperor. Indeed, Yusheng has gotten the true inheritance of the devil emperor. The hearts of many trembled, as Yusheng was urging on the emperor's will. Clearly, He had also inherited the capability of a great emperor, and it seemed that he had integrated the will into his own demonic body, perfectly as one. This discovery further confirmed to the others that Yuxing's origin was likely astounding. However, could the gap between realms really be made up? The Vajra divine child, at this moment, was incredibly powerful. Boom, boom, boom. Just as this thought came into their minds, demon-like figures appeared next to Yuxing. Each of the demon gods had a different face and aura. It was as if they had been called into existence. However, each demon god contained an unimaginable demonic power never seen before. When they saw the sight in front of them, the blood of these cultivators from the divine prefecture ran cold. 6 demon gods. Heavenly demon godly advents, one of the most powerful methods of the devil emperors. And he actually learned it. Some of the old-timers from divine prefecture trembled fiercely. It was said that only a few people were ever able to control this skill, and very rarely did any of the devil emperor's direct disciples ever cultivate this particular method. How could Yuxing know how to control the heavenly demon godly advent? Chapter 2373, Severed Arm. The 6 demon gods stood tall with the world under their feet, their demonic might roaring like rolling thunder as if they were each the master of millions of demons. Each of the auras of their demon arts, which flowed on them, were unique from each other. Yuxing stood in the center with a solemn expression. As his demon might surged and roared, he raised his head and looked towards the divine child of the celestial Vajra region. Just then, golden divine lights spanning more than 10,000 miles streamed down from the skies. One after another, terrifying voices of the great path echoed out from. It was as though these formless sounds could shatter the void. In the next instant, the celestial figure exerted an incredibly great divine force as he raised his hand to release a blast. Trillions of golden divine lights shot out, deluging the skies of the region. At the same time, countless Vajra divine seals came raining down. Within them was the strongest divine seal of all, able to destroy space itself. Unmatched demonic blades started forming in each of the 6 demonic gods' hands. Each of the demonic gods had different blade stances. In the next moment, the first swing of the blade was made. The physical world roared as rays of light shot out from the blade and shrouded the skies. Then came the second swing, even more powerful and overwhelming than before. It gushed forward continuously as it was complemented by the sword chi of the first strike. Followed by that, the third swing, and the fourth swing. 9 slashes of the heavenly demon. The powerful cultivators around them were shaken to their core. They never thought that Yuxing would use the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon in tandem with the heavenly demon godly advent. According to legend, this was a technique used only by the devil emperor when he conquered the devil world and crushed countless demon overlords. Now Yuxing used the heavenly demon godly advent to perform the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon, slashing 6 continuous times. Each slash was more potent than the last as the countless sword rays exploded in the air and almost split space and time in the area. The Vajra divine seals were crushed and eradicated. In the middle of it all, the first 6 slashes of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon fused and emitted a sword ray that spanned more than 10,000 miles, forming a sky-splitting demonic blade that carried a broadsword well capable of tearing apart the skies of the region. At last, the sky-splitting demonic blade slashed onto the strongest divine seal at the center. TSS. As the broadsword will landed, the divine seal was split through the middle. At the same time, the supremely dominating demonic blade continued to slice towards the figure of the celestial Vajra ancient god. Everything in its way was shattered. The Vajra ancient god's palms slammed down on the skies beneath him. His vast golden divine light erupted, and his Vajra divine powers were exerted to their fullest potential with extreme ferociousness, directly blasting onto the demonic blade. "Break!" Yuxing roared. He raised his head to watch the celestial sky, where a demon god projection appeared. It was so large that one could not see where it ended. It slashed out a single broadsword will, which fused into the demon blade. It was as if the blade carried the will of the demon god himself. The divine seal was split up in an instant, and the arm of the Vajra ancient god was slashed upon. A crack appeared on the arm and started expanding upward. The expression of the god projection above the celestial skies changed into one of shock and fear. The vast divine lights erupted again, and he wielded the full power of the Vajra region. But at this point, it was already futile. The demonic lights inundated the skies. Starting from a thin line, the entire golden dominion was hacked in half while the golden light screen, which shrouded the celestial skies, was shattered. Some could hear an agonized scream coming from inside as a bright red bloodstain appeared from the broken golden lights. Some bits of blood spilled down and scattered into the void. The hearts of many who watched pounded, and all the powerful cultivators looked at the figure who stood in the void, the divine child of the Vajra region. As the light screen shattered and the divine powers within dissipated, they saw a figure appear at the initial spot. It was the divine child of the Vajra region. Shockingly, one of his arms was severed. Clearly, the arm of the celestial god was a manifestation of his arm, and it had been slashed off by Yuxing. The divine child of the Vajra region had an arm slashed off by Yuxing. He's ruthless! The cultivators of the divine prefecture gasped in their hearts. Yuxing seriously dared to do something so ruthless. An arm slashed off by his demonic blade was a wound on the great path. Even though a Renhuang plane being could regenerate broken limbs, have incredible healing powers, and could survive nearly any injury so long as he was still breathing, if he were wounded by a great path power that was stronger than his own, it would be extremely difficult to recover. If he could exceed the plane of the attack that caused the great path injury or obtain a high-level medication, then he could heal it completely. Otherwise, the severed arm was likely impossible to recover. No one knew if there were ways within the Vajra region to heal it. But the only one ruthless enough to do such a thing was Yuxing. He really showed everyone how ruthless high-level cultivators from the devil world could be and how bold and fearless they were to inflict such grave wounds upon the divine child from the Vajra region. Even the powerful cultivators from the other ancient god clans of the divine prefecture wouldn't dare do such a thing. The hearts of the high-level cultivators from the Vajra region trembled, their figures flew into the air, and strands of powerful aura started to erupt. But then one person stopped them, waved his hand, and the many numerous high-level cultivators all temporarily subdued their anger. This was the Vajra divine child's fight. It was his hurdle, and he would have to face it eventually. No matter how powerful he became, there would forever be someone who would overwhelm him. The Vajra divine child had already cultivated to the 8th plane. If he could overcome this setback, then he could grow to become the Vajra region lord. If he fell before this hurdle, he would likely stop at this stage for the rest of his life, and it would be difficult for him to keep his status as the divine child of the Vajra region. Furthermore, this was a fair battle. The person who severed his arm was Yuxing from the devil world, who could have been taught the demonic arts by the devil emperor himself. What could they do about it? Try to get revenge on Yuxing? That would be starting a war with the devil world. The Vajra region was a force of the Vajra domain. They were extremely powerful. But if they were really to start a war with the devil world, they would be overestimating themselves. The devil world was a force that could take on the entire divine prefecture on its own. You can all stop watching now. A cultivator who studied under the devil emperor, the most charming person of the entire heavenly mandate realm, Shenying the Great Skuqin, and a goddess. What is there to hesitate about? Said a voice. It was a powerful cultivator from the Futian clan. Since the Vajra divine child had one arm slashed off, the nature of this battle had changed. Before this, they were trying to use their aura and might to force their wills upon Futian, but now, this was a true battle between equals. The cultivators nodded, clearly understanding the situation. Divine lights started circling around their bodies. Instantly, the vast voids were deluged by the might of the great path. The aura emitted from it was terrifying beyond imagination. It encased the entire heavenly mandate city, and expanded the battlefield to infinity. Atop the celestial skies, the power of the great path flowed. It was as if someone released the divine wheel of the great path to forge a great path domain. Yuxing shifted his gaze away from the Vajra divine child towards the other cultivators. With that slash just now, he had roughly figured out the power level of the Vajra divine child. However, although the Vajra divine child released his secret arts, he was still only at the 8th plane. The 9th plane cultivators here were surely stronger than an 8th plane cultivator. Therefore, it was a safe bet that his battle would not be easy. Dang dang. Just then, countless dancing notes entered the ears of all of the cultivators present, causing these powerful cultivators of the divine prefecture to feel an extremely strong will, the will of grief. Each note that entered their ears invaded their will directly and without exception, causing them to feel grief. "We can't let him continue playing the divine requiem," someone said as he looked towards where Futian was located. Wherever he looked, space was being warped and twisted. Chapter 2374, An Empress's Inheritance? The person who intervened wore a lavish robe. It was of faint gold and shone magnificently throughout the area. He was surrounded by powerful divine lights of the great path of space, and his pupils were also gleaming gold. When he looked toward Futian, his gaze warped space as if creating a turbulent storm of physical space, crushing Futian. Hua Jieyu, who was standing behind Futian, looked towards the person in return, and an equally powerful but formless force of the great path erupted. Both of them stood still, yet heavy, muffled thumps sounded on the battlefield atop the void. It was as though nuclear blast waves were colliding, causing deep and dark cracks to appear where they came into contact. The man turned his gaze towards Hua Jieyu. He was a member of the Jiang Ancient God clan of the Taishang domain. The Jiang Ancient God clan had extraordinary status in the Taishang domain. Even the house of the Lord of Taishang maintained a friendly relationship with them and gave them ample respect. According to legend, the ancestor of the Jiang Ancient God clan obtained the title of Heavenly Emperor Jiang, an extremely powerful being who established the clan. After he had fallen, the bloodline of the Jiang went extinct. So, the Heavenly Emperor Jiang used his supreme divine powers to protect the Jiang clan from being wiped out during the ensuing years of turmoil, which enabled them to pass down their lineage into the present day. The Jiang Ancient God clan was rather mysterious. Very few people knew how powerful their full strength was, and no one dared to provoke them. But naturally, the Jiang Ancient God clan was supremely powerful. The person who struck just now was named Jiang Qingfeng. He was the most outstanding individual of this generation in the Jiang Ancient God clan. At the peak level Renhuang plane, barely anyone in the entire Taishang domain could compare with him. Jiang Qingfeng perceived the force from Hua Jieyu. He could clearly feel her telekinetic powers fusing into the worldly great path, giving her absolute control over the area. With just one thought, it was as if time froze, and all other great paths were banished from the area. Even Jiang Qingfeng's great path of space felt like it was sealed. An even more powerful divine force of space erupted from him. The divine forces of space on him were somehow like extremely sharp blades, cutting through the void and attempting to split open Hua Jieyu's powers. Hua Jieyu was still standing there as magnificent divine lights of the great path erupted from her. Her eyes were like those of a divine being, colliding with Jiang Qingfeng's gaze. At that moment, it was as though both of them had entered a world of the void. Jiang Qifeng could only feel a powerful telekinetic force invading his consciousness. It felt like the force was corroding his spiritual soul. He saw countless divine projections walk toward him, and each one looked like Hua Jieyu's true self rather than just a clone. His heart trembled, and finally, he understood why the Vajra divine child had been wounded. The opponent could directly invade their enemy's consciousness and attack their spiritual soul. Moreover, this was an extremely dominating force that broke into their minds with just a split second of eye contact. "Get out!" a voice sounded in Jiang Qingfeng's mind. Instantly, his consciousness turned into a collapsing world of space. It was as though the fabric of space and time were warping in order to reel in all of the millions of projections he saw and tear them into pieces. However, as the projections were crushed, an endless swarm of them continued to enter Jiang Qingfeng's mind, pressuring him greatly. Even though these projections weren't attacking him, he could still feel their great force. He didn't dare to let down his guard, as it would only take one slip-up for his spiritual soul to be invaded, which would have dire consequences. "Jiang Qingfeng is in trouble," someone said as the crowd looked up toward the arena high above. These high-level cultivators from the ancient god clans of the Divine Prefecture naturally knew how powerful Jiang Qifeng was. Yet, even at his level, he was facing trouble from Huajiyu. More divine lights of the great path of space seethed from Jiang Qifeng's body, yet he didn't continue to attack. Instead, all of it was bound to him. Which great emperor's inheritance did she receive? Someone asked in a hushed voice. Both the divine lights on Huajiyu and the powers that she was releasing showed that she had clearly inherited the powers of one of the great emperors. But which one was it? It seemed that Huajiyu had absolute control over space and could invade other people's spiritual souls. Just then, a rage-filled roar echoed through the skies. The divine child of the infinite mountain didn't just watch, but he attacked too. Trillions of divine swords were launched in Futian's direction. However, two projections walked out from Huajiyu's figure. They were perfect clones of her, even the aura of the great path on them was almost exactly the same. Exterior incarnation! The group of powerful cultivators once again froze. They couldn't believe that Huajiyu actually summoned exterior incarnations. Furthermore, the auras of these exterior incarnations were as strong as her true self. Divine lights of the great path erupted from these two exterior incarnations as well, and they were incredibly magnificent. The incarnations raised their heads to look toward the void. Instantly, it was as if the unending stream of divine swords paused in action, and their speed slowed to a halt. How is this woman so powerful? One of the ancient god clan cultivators thought. In the past, which of the great emperors were well versed in these powers? One of the cultivators asked openly, which prompted those around him to contemplate. Absolute control, spiritual soul attack, exterior incarnation. All of the powers that Huajiyu had released so far were very unique, and they weren't sure which of the great emperors cultivated them. I think there's one person who did, one of the old cultivators of the ancient god clan said softly. Immediately, the cultivators turned their gaze toward him. The old cultivator explained. In the ancient era, legend has it that there was a female great emperor. She ruled trillions of living beings and projected trillions of her telekinetic powers to pass on her teachings to the world she ruled over. Every cultivator was influenced by her, and thus contributed to her cultivation. She could even directly control these nearly infinite number of lives and was hence an extremely controversial figure amongst the great emperors. Below the skies, cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy and Original Realm all had astonished expressions on their faces. Was there really a great emperor like that? Back then, Brahma's pure sky empress had an extremely uncanny and unique method of cultivation. It was said that her consciousness was spread across the 3,000 realms, and that she had incarnations in each of the 3,000 realms of the Great Path. Huajiyu was one of those who had been influenced by her incarnation. She was almost the victim of a walk-in whereby she would become one of her proxy cultivation furnaces. Yet, the powers the Brahma's pure sky empress cultivated were actually inherited from a great emperor from the ancient era? After Brahma's pure sky empress gave Huajiyu what she wanted, could it be that Huajiyu found the inheritance of the same great emperor in the divine prefecture? Just as they were speaking, countless musical notes streamed out of nowhere. They wove together into a song of grief yet carried a powerful, sonorous tone as they landed on the unending array of divine swords. Instantly, it was as if the physical space in the area exploded, destroying the divine swords and forming a thunderstorm of music, sweeping across the world. At the same time, an immense will of grief permeated through all matter in the area, seeping into the eardrums of the cultivators with every note. These notes contained unique mythical powers that directly infiltrated their spiritual souls. The sounds of the Guqin contained a will of the great emperor, and all the powerful cultivators present had sensed that their emotions were being influenced. Every single one of them felt the will of grief. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.